What is up? What is up? What is up, everybody? What's going on, everybody on Rumble, everybody on YouTube? Make sure you hit that thumbs up on your way in. Please make sure you do that because that helps bring more people to the show. Shout out to Sarah G over on Rumble. Thank you for your season's greetings, my sister, and anybody else over on Rumble. If you guys want to see the Rumble numbers go up, you got to get that chat jumping. If you don't get the chat jumping, the numbers ain't really gonna move. So you got to hit the thumbs up and at the very least, just say hi in the chat, drop a waving emoji or something. You don't have to actually participate in the conversation if you don't wish to, but I know I know a lot of you guys just be lurking and stuff, and maybe you're watching on your TV, so you can't comment or it's too difficult to comment. But if you are watching from your mobile device, it definitely helps stimulate the algorithm when you comment in the chat. And that's why the YouTube channel has always been growing faster than the Rumble channel. Hey, what's up, Kansas 1022? Because the YouTube chat, if you're a Rumble viewer and you bounce over to the YouTube channel, you'll see how active the chat is, and that activity in the chat actually helps. All right. So I just need you guys to keep that in mind as you watch the show, because I'm being shadow banned on YouTube for sure. And hitting the like button, hitting the share button definitely helps. I don't know if you guys heard that echo, but I had one of my phones going. I didn't even realize it because I got my headphones on. But if you guys have been following me, you guys have witnessed the censorship. You guys have witnessed the the deletion of my channels, the removal of videos, the mass flagging by the trolls. You guys have been here through it all, pretty much. So you already know we're swimming upstream, but the information is good, so they can't really stop me. They can't really get me to a place where nobody's going to watch my videos. But I'm trying to get beyond the place that we've kind of been stagnated at for the last couple of years in the 2,000 subscriber range, and we have now hit 2,900 and some change. I believe it's 2,910. So we are literally 90 subscribers away from hitting 300. I mean, 3,000, my bad. 3,000. We're literally 90 subscribers away from hitting 3,000. And so when you guys come to the show, hitting that like button, hitting that share button, hitting the subscribe button, hitting the notification bell, commenting in the chat, leaving a comment after the video is over, all those interactions, all that helps. All that helps with the traffic. So if you guys want to see me grow, you want to help me out, there's a lot more that you can do than you actually think has an effect. You know what I'm saying? All the what's the comments? What do they call that? What do they call that? Not interactions. What's the word for it? There's a word for it. I can't remember. And it's funny, I was just on the phone with B Miles a couple hours ago talking about it, and I knew the word. Now all of a sudden I can't remember the word. It's not interaction, but interaction keeps coming to my mind. It is engagement. That's the word, engagement. So all engagement is good engagement. Hitting the like button and commenting are the two most powerful pieces of engagement that you can engage in order to help the channel grow. All right. So I just want you guys to keep that in mind. So tonight's topic is pretty interesting. It's actually a topic that I hadn't. Hang on one second. It's actually a topic that I hadn't thought about until recently, when I actually started diving deep into the old world and Tartaria and their architecture and how their buildings were generating energy from the atmosphere. And I'm looking at what's happening with the patriot movement and the deep state. And I'm coming to realize, based on the stories of how the knowledge of the Tartarian architecture was kind of like just disappeared magically. All the records of the old buildings and the old structures kind of vanished, and it appears as if somebody within the last 200 years had actually caused a major reset that destroyed this technology, and the knowledge was not necessarily lost, but it was lost to the general public and thus hidden by the elites. And when you follow the timeline of the Great Reset that they call the Mud Flood or whatever cataclysm it was, the ruling families that kind of took over the world after this, I guess you could call it apocalypse, in this post-apocalyptic world, are the same families that are in control of the world today. And these same families that are in control of the world today are the very same families that are basically running the deep state. And these are the power players that the patriot movement is going against. These are the people that have infiltrated every government on earth and has rigged it against their own people. These are the people who are making international law and trying to force it on sovereign nations. These are the people that profit from the human trafficking and the drug trafficking and use their connections and their control of governments to protect this trafficking. And then on the flip side of things, you have these uprisings that has happened throughout history, and these leaders who have for the most part have been defeated because of fatal mistakes that they made in their fight against this deep state. And now you fast forward and you see Donald Trump and Putin, even though we're being told in the media that America and Russia are enemies and America and China are enemies, it's not necessarily true. Excuse me. The Russian enemies of America are the Russian deep state. The Chinese enemies of America are the Chinese deep state. And what Russia and China both have been doing and assisting the other BRICS nations in doing was purging their governments and purging their countries of this deep state corporate control. And for the most part, Vladimir Putin has been successful. Another good example is this country in Africa called Burkina Faso, where Captain Ibrahim Traore has assumed leadership of that country. And under his leadership, with the help of the BRICS Development Bank, he's actually been able to extract the wealth from his own country and use it to improve and develop his own country, which is awesome. Now, you wonder, why were these third world countries stuck in third world status under the old system for so long? Well, that's because the way these countries were being ran by the local leaders was as such. They would be given a loan by the IMF and the World Bank, a loan with high-ass interest that the IMF and the World Bank knew they couldn't pay back. Then, when these countries would default on their loans, part of the agreement was if you default on a loan, you have to turn over large swaths of land and your infrastructure, like your power plants and your ports, to these private firms that are basically working for these foreign governments. And that's how the colonization in Africa happened. So what the BRICS Development Bank did to change that was, with the help of the Russian and the Chinese military, what they did was they started offering these countries better interest rates on better loans, where these countries can actually develop themselves and have enough freed up money to pay these loans back so they wouldn't be trapped into defaulting. It was predatory lending on an international scale, basically. And the BRICS Development Bank basically came in and started giving these countries fair deals. And this is why you see the media pushing the idea that America and Russia are enemies, America and China are enemies, when that's not the case. So think of it like this. There's an independent entrepreneur that needs startup capital. He goes to a loan shark. The loan shark lends him the money to start his business, but the interest rate that the loan shark is charging and the terms that the loan shark is offered make it impossible for this entrepreneur to actually turn a profit because so much of his profit has to go back to paying the loan. Eventually, he defaults on the loan. His business fails. He can't pay the loan shark back. Now the loan shark can come in, seize his assets, seize his car, his house, his jewelry, put a lien on his bank account, whatever they want to do, they can now do. Thus, he loses everything because he took a bad deal. Now, and then compare that to the other scenario where the entrepreneur meets a fair lender that charges him a fair interest rate, where he borrows the money and he can still make enough and has fairer terms where he can still turn a profit and not have to surrender so much of his profits to the lender, and he can still continue to profit, grow his business, pay off the loan. That makes for a more successful deal, because that lender is intended on getting those payments back and getting that loan paid back, rather than creating an excuse for themselves to steal your assets, to seize your assets. So that's essentially the fundamental difference between the World Bank and the IMF and the BRICS Development Bank. And the crooked part about the World Bank and the IMF, and what they were doing, was they would give fairer terms to more developed nations. So the EU and America and countries like Canada and so on, they would get better deals, lower interest rates, 1%, 2%, 3% interest on the loans, whereas these African nations would get 20%, 15% interest on their loans, which drives the payments up higher than they can afford to make. Now, what would usually happen back in the day in previous administrations was, whenever one of these small third world countries decided they weren't going to pay back the IMF, and the warlords would rise up and fight off the militaries that are coming in to try to seize their assets, the U.S. military would be deployed, and there will be some cockamamie story being circulated on the news about how the leader of this country and the government of this country is corrupt and they need to be removed and this and that, and the American people would cheer for the overthrow. Then the jackals would go in and create civil unrest, and then they would overthrow the leaders of those countries, and then boom, you got the puppet government in place, and they continue to play ball, exploiting the country that they're tasked with representing. But a strange thing happened when Donald Trump got elected. When Donald Trump got elected in 2016, one of his goals was to cease aggressive military action around the world. And that aggressive military action that was going on around the world was just that: the removal of governments that wouldn't play ball with the World Bank and the IMF, replaced with the installation of puppet governments that would play ball with the World Bank and the IMF. The IMF is the International Monetary Fund. And Trump has ceased those military operations, which means those countries that wanted to turn against the World Bank and the IMF have successfully been able to, because America, this is why the American military was always used as the world police. We weren't necessarily the world police. We were essentially the world loan shark enforcers. That's what we were, because, most police actually stop crimes. But when you have a police force that's enabling the crime and stopping the victims from reporting the crime, then you can't really call them police. They're not police anymore. They're criminal enforcers is what they've become. And that's what our military has been used for, because we've had corrupt, crooked puppet commander-in-chiefs. When Trump came into office, all of that changed. And then we started to see more and more nations ditching the dollar, switching to gold-backed currency, joining the BRICS. We see the BRICS Development Bank start giving out loans, development loans to these countries, and the U.S. military has not invaded a single one. So when it comes to where Trump stands as far as the deep state, that should tell you all you need to know. But that's only if you know. And if you didn't know, now that you're watching Citizen Man, you do know, because that's what I'm here to do, let you know, right? So Trump and Putin have had a secret alliance this entire time, and they've always postured as if they were enemies, because that's how you pull the wool over your enemy's eyes. When you're going against an international cabal, you can't let the international cabal know your weaknesses. And one of the weaknesses would be exposing your alliances, because then pressure can be put on your allies to turn against you. But if your allies are already posturing as if they're against you, then your enemies, the deep state, they don't see that country as a viable source of force against you, because they're already a force against you. So they would see it as a waste of resources to try to convince Vladimir Putin to bomb America, because he's already posturing as if he will. Now, this Venezuela thing has kind of added fuel to that fire of Trump and Putin having beef. And that's all part of the play. It's all part of the play, because Russia sent a naval ship down to Venezuela in order to, quote unquote, support the Venezuelans. And they have boots on the ground. And what those Russian boots on the ground are doing are relaying intel back to U.S. naval intelligence. And now the U.S. Navy has created a blockade around Venezuela, and they're seizing all their oil in their oil tankers. The only vessels that are able to pass the blockade are non-petroleum tankers. Any cargo ship, supply ship, food ship, no weapons are coming in and out, and no oil is coming in and out. That's what they're seizing. And they're seizing that oil for a reason. And the reason why they're seizing that oil is because the suppliers of that oil are paying Venezuela large sums of money for that oil. So now that that oil is getting seized and those shipments aren't making it, what it's going to do is it's going to drain Maduro's finances, because now all that money he took up front for those oil shipments, he now will have to give back because the shipments won't be delivered. America has enough oil reserves. We don't need to steal anybody else's oil. This is a power play to put pressure on the Maduro administration. Now, everybody is up in arms, and there's a bunch of people defending Maduro, and they're like, well, Trump's going after Venezuela, and it's aggressive, and this. Understand this. Maduro is not the legitimate president of Venezuela. That's number one. Number two, Maduro has turned Venezuela into a narco state where the cartels run everything, and it's been used as a launch pad for cartel shipments going through the Caribbean. And that created another problem where in the Caribbean, the narcos basically control. Shout out to my man David for the gift. Appreciate you. He said, learn so much from you, bro, from your show, bro. Appreciate you, David. Thank you for that support, my man. And as a result, the Caribbean has fallen under narco state control. And I have an example of that as pertaining to what went on in Puerto Rico after Hurricane Maria. And you go through the Caribbean island by island, and what you'll find is corrupt politician after corrupt leader after corrupt leader. And where's this corruption money coming from? It's coming from the drug traffickers. Oh, David Emmanuel, that's you. Shout out to you, David Emmanuel, for that Cash App, brother. And so part of Trump's plan is not only to remove Maduro from power in Venezuela and have free and fair elections where the people will elect a leader who will not allow narco traffic through their country, thus cutting off the supply lines to the narco pimps in the Caribbean. And part of that mission is also to make security deals with the Caribbean islands to stop and block the cartel traffic once the U.S. military lets up the pressure on Venezuela. Now, the reason why Maduro is not the legitimate president of Venezuela is because he pulled a Joe Biden after the election when he won. There was another candidate that actually won by a landslide, like Trump did in 2020, but Nicolas Maduro withheld the election data And his party just came out and publicly claimed that he won the election by a narrow margin, but never showed any proof that he won. And the other candidate that did actually win by a landslide, his team had access to the voter data. They had the ballot counts from the polling stations, and they had the accurate numbers of the actual election. But because Maduro took over the country by force, that candidate was actually forced to flee Venezuela to Spain. So he's residing in Spain currently. But he is the duly elected president of Venezuela, not Nicolas Maduro. And if you know anything about how Trump feels about elections, well, he doesn't like that very much. So here we have a corrupt leader that shitted on the votes of the people in order to seize control of his nation and run his nation like a literal narco state, using his northern shoreline as a launch pad for narco traffic, for maritime narco traffic. So that's a huge problem. And not only is he making money off the narcotics, but he's also making money off the human smuggling that's moving along these same trade routes. Not only is he making money off of that, but he's making money off of the oil sales. And that's another reason why Trump has to seize that oil, because Maduro can't be allowed to continue producing oil in order to help fund his narco state that he took over by force. So Trump's using his force to, one, honor the will of the Venezuelan people and have the duly elected president take his rightful place as president of that country, and two, completely demolish the narco state that Venezuela has been turned into by cutting off all their supply lines through the Caribbean and leaving such a strong force in the Caribbean Sea that those Caribbean islands that are not corrupt can actually have enough naval power to continue the mission, protect their own waters. Which brings me to Trump's announcement about his plan to build 25 new Golden Fleet battleships. Trump wants to build 25 new Golden Fleet battleships. He did a video talking about it. I have the article here. We'll get into it. And everybody's losing their minds, right? But pay attention to the term that he uses, Golden Fleet. Almost sounds like something out of the Golden Age. And in thinking about it, the old world was commonly referred to as the Golden Age. During the height of the Tartarian Empire was the Golden Age. And when you hear Trump use terms like golden this and golden age, it kind of makes you think Tartaria. At least for me, it does. And Trump is not the only world leader that has used this terminology. Now, this article here, historian Ann Applebaum, breaks down what Trump's alignment with Russia means. So remember the slide I showed you in the last show about the quote unquote historians and how much we can't trust them? And I showed you the article where they lied their ass off openly. Well, here's another historian that I believe lied her ass off. Look at the name, Applebaum. Sounds a lot like Scheinbaum, doesn't it? Yeah, that's a small hat name. Just in case you were wondering, that's a small hat name. And all this ties into the forgotten world of the forgotten world of Tartary, or the old world. And hang on. And I am going to show you how it all ties together. Remember, the free energy, the new technology that's being released to the public that's been suppressed, the talks about the new ballroom that Trump's planning to build. All these are little breadcrumbs that seem to confirm that something more is afoot than just a political struggle between two political ideologies vying for control of their nations. It's a lot more than that, and it's a lot deeper than that. So we'll get into all of that tonight. So don't worry. We're just getting started. But before we get started, make sure you guys go subscribe to the Citizen Man Backup channel. Also, follow me over on Rumble. If you have not subscribed to the Rumble page yet, make sure you do, because everything that we can't keep up on YouTube that keeps getting flagged and censored, you'll be able to find it on Rumble. And a lot of past videos that have been censored, you can find on Rumble. So get on over to Rumble and support your boy. Shout out to my Rumble viewer, Sarah G, Kansas 1022, Will Eric, and Kansas 1022 says true. Yes, Kansas 1022. I try to make everything. I try to validate everything that I'm saying, because I don't want to sit here and lie to you guys. 1022 is actually one of the best 22 long rifles you can ever own, by the way. So shout out to you for that. I see the coding. I can read the code. And of course, last but not least, if any of you guys feel so inclined to support the show, you could do so by sending in a kind donation via Cash App, PayPal, or Venmo using the tag scrolling across the screen in the banner below. The links that are pinned to the top of the YouTube chat in the black box where it says Citizen Man TV in yellow. Just click the yellow, the box opens up. All the links are there, and you can also find those very same links in the description box of every video on YouTube and Rumble. And I want to give a big shout out to my good brother Lee14224 with that faithful support on the PayPal. He says, looking forward to a great show. Merry Christmas, everyone. Or Saturnalia, if you wish. Contribute a little bit for this great content, please. Appreciate that, Brother Lee, and thank you for that call to action. I just wish more folks would hear it. And I want to give a big shout out to my brother David Emmanuel in the chat. Shout out to you for that support. He says, I learned so much from your show, bro. Well, I thank you for that, brother. I thank you for actually taking the time to listen. Because I know it's a lot. I know it could be long-winded sometimes, but I know what I'm talking about. And if you don't believe that I know what I'm talking about, here's one of my credentials, I guess. I kind of use this as a credential now. And it's remarks by the president, October 10th, 2020. And if you see that date, October 10th, and you don't know what's so significant about that date, I'll tell you. 7 days before that date, on October 3rd, I was actually T-boned in a car wreck. Somebody ran a red light and T-boned me in my truck. And I wasn't aware of what was taking place at the time. And it wasn't until a few days later, after consulting with my audience members, of course, that it became apparent to me that that car accident was no coincidence, and it was an attempt on my life. And it was also not only an attempt on my life, but it was to stop me from going to Washington, D.C. to meet Trump on October 10th, 2020. Because this was the public event, which was the remarks by the president at the White House. And after that public event, there was a private meeting that was scheduled to happen afterwards, which I also was invited to. And I believe it was a press briefing. To decide who was going to be in the presidential press pool, or to tell us content creators, what the situation actually was and what we're allowed to report on and what we shouldn't report on, right? But because of the car accident, after I realized that, there were sinister forces at play, and this wasn't just a regular car accident. This was actually an attempt on my life, which fortunately I was able to walk away from because of my defensive driving skills. I decided not to go. I decided to not take the meeting. And the reason for that was because I did not want to leave my home unattended. I didn't want to take the trip to DC after what had just happened, because obviously they know where I live. I didn't want to leave my house empty and then come home to my shit burnt down, burglarized, or they could have broken and planted bugs all over my house and shit. You know what I'm saying? Or have an assassin sitting inside waiting for me. You know what I mean? So I decided to stay put, stick around, and batten down the hatchets. Thus, I lost out on a golden opportunity, but all was not lost, because I do still have a copy of the email that they sent me for the invite. So when I tell people, I know people, and people in high places know me, I'm not lying to you, and here's the proof. It says, Dear Jaden Ben, please see your invitation below for remarks by the president to be held at the White House on Saturday, October 10th, 2020. And this was a VIP event, by the way. Please accept or regret using the linked invitation below by Friday, October 9th at 5 p.m. All attendees must be registered via link. And that's the flyer right there. And at the bottom here, it says, please note this invitation is individual to the recipient and non-transferable. In other words, I did not get this invitation secondhand from somebody else. I got this invitation directly from Trump's White House. Okay. So when I tell you guys, I know what I'm talking about. I have viable sources. I am not bullshitting you. I am not bullshitting you. Because how else would they have known about me? And for any of you guys that have been following me since my first channel, October 10th, 2020, I didn't have much more than 4,000 or 5,000 subscribers on my channel. And oddly enough, after the car accident on October 3rd, me missing the meeting on October 10th, by December of 2020, my first channel had been completely zapped off YouTube. So this was obviously an attempt to silence me and prevent me from taking advantage of this opportunity that was given to me. And I guess in a way, I guess they succeeded, because I chose to sit out the meeting and now I'm kind of on my own, you know? But nevertheless, the war goes on. I'll just have to fight from where I'm at, right? And thank God I have you guys in my back. You know, I have you guys at my six, and I got support, and I got people that are willing to listen and share the message, so I can rebuild my army. That's okay. That is all right. So let's go ahead and get started. So the first slide I want you guys to pay attention to is the Forgotten World. This is Chicago, Illinois, 1893, Buffalo, New York, 1901, St. Louis, Missouri, 1904, San Francisco, California, 1915. And if you look at the architecture, let me see if I can get my other. You see if I can get my other slide, my other gallery up, so we can actually zoom in on that thing. Is it just gonna pull that one picture? No. Oh, it's moving so slow though. Golly, this is painful. Come on. This is painstaking. I wish I had my grid view like I used to have on my old computer. The grid view was so much better, because then I could just go to the grid view and find exactly what it is I needed to find. Yes, that was Michelle Obama with the big back. Yes, it was. Oh, we'll get to that. Don't worry. This shit's just making me give away all my secrets. It's making me give away all my shit. And I don't like it. Come on. There it is. What the hell? That was painful. So look at the architecture. Chicago, Illinois, Buffalo, New York, St. Louis, San Francisco, right? These are all American cities. And you see this same type of architecture mirrored all over the world. That is no coincidence. Because you see what the Tartarian Empire, what it was a series of nations all across the world that had the same ancient knowledge. They had the knowledge of the ancestors. They knew how to generate energy directly from the earth, and they knew about cymatics. They knew about using sound waves and frequencies to manipulate matter. And with this knowledge, they were able to build all across the world these magnificent megalithic structures that we now see, that we see modern scientists scratching their heads trying to figure out how they built it. Now, here's the thing. Most modern scientists really don't have a clue how these things were built, but there are a few elitists at the top that do know how these were built, but they're not allowed to say, because this is one of the secrets of Freemasonry. The manipulation of matter to make these extravagant stoneworks. And with that knowledge being hidden from the people, the architecture also, a lot of it has been destroyed, and there are no records of it. There's no blueprints or plans on how it was built or anything. So all these buildings that doubled as energy generators, well, we have no idea how to recreate this anymore, at least for now. But somebody does. And the people who do have been infiltrated by Trump and the Patriots. And Trump and the Patriots have now gotten access to that knowledge and to that information. And this goes to the Nasara, the point in Nasara where it says the release of new and suppressed technology will be will be given to the people. And part of this suppressed technology is how to generate energy directly from the earth. Now, when you talk about the elites that have hidden this knowledge and created the world that we live in now, which Bro Sanchez so brilliantly put, we're living in a post-apocalyptic society. We're just about 200 years or so removed from that apocalypse. And this is why when you go back through the old world, you see all this fancy, artsy, gilded, you know, architecture. And then you fast forward to the modern world where we're supposed to have better technology. You see less extravagant, less complex, more primitive, basic construction being utilized. And that's because we have developed ourselves past the apocalyptic age or past the apocalyptic event, but we've lost a lot of the technology before that apocalypse happened. Now, how did that apocalypse happen? Is a big question a lot of people ask. And my theory is it was either thermonuclear warfare where they had big ass bombs dropping on each other, or a sinister force from within Tartaria basically committed a suicide attack against the whole empire with the cataclysm to destroy everything, because the power of this technology had fallen into the hands of wicked people, nefarious characters, who, instead of using that technology to build and improve society like the rest of the people of the past, they actually use that technology to destroy, enslave, and control society. Thus, we have the controlled society today. It's basically like The Walking Dead, but Negan got the rule for 100 years. And if you guys watched The Walking Dead, you would have gotten the reference. So let's take a look at this cabal that has seized control and rebuilt this post-apocalyptic world in their image, with primitive knowledge, primitive technology, limited knowledge to the people so they can be enslaved, and all the advanced technology and advanced knowledge they keep for themselves so they can remain in control. Okay, folks, this is George Soros' son. Do you get the connection? Alexander Soros is his name. There he is with Obama. There he is with Kamala. There he is with Nancy Pelosi. There he is with Chuck Schumer. You know what you'll never see? Pictures with Trump and George Soros' son. Because George Soros comes from one of those families that had seized control of the world. Now, George Soros came to power during the World War II time, the World War II era. But he followed in the footsteps of his predecessors, and he learned how to cheat the game. Or he learned that how the game was rigged, and worked it to his favor. And as a result of George Soros having lots and lots of money and lots of control, he was able to buy off elections through his nonprofits and campaign donations. And thus we have the scenarios that we have today, where we have crooked, bought and paid for judges. And of course, the black ones are always the cheapest. Oddly enough, it's the same thing with prostitution. I don't understand why, but that's just the way it is. Meet Judge Joy Kennedy. She lowered bail to just $5,000 for a violent repeat offender in Cleveland. 5 days later, Ben McComas was murdered. Soft on crime policies are costing lives. Absolutely shameful. And in case you were wondering, what is the motive behind these soft on crime policies? I'll tell you what the motive is. It's multifaceted. The first motive is obviously depopulation. You want more people to die, let more killers on the street. That's number one. Number two, in the midst of all this killing and depopulation that will be taking place at the hands of these violent offenders, these violent felons, you will have cries and calls from the general public to protect them. And they will run straight to the very same government that betrayed them for that protection. And the government will say, sure, we got all these murderers running around on the loose and they're killing y'all. So, yeah, we'll protect you. I'll tell you what, we'll put cameras on every street corner. We'll have the police go back to doing stop and frisk. We'll bring in more police. We'll give them tanks. And we'll give them robotic dogs, and we'll give them see-through lens. Hell, we'll just give them the whole RoboCop set. No, matter of fact, we'll make them all Judge Dredd. How about that? And before you know it, you got yourself a police state at the behest of the very same people who this police state is designed to oppress. So you do the soft on crime policy. You contribute to the depopulation agenda while simultaneously setting the stage for the people to consent to a massive, overbearing, over-oppressive police state. That's the agenda. And these judges, they may or may not know this, but what they do know is if they stick to the script and follow the program, those checks will keep coming. What about stock says, what is money? Is valuable if you don't, it is valuable, you don't own it. Well, money allows you to own things. And unfortunately, we live in a world that's governed by money. So if you don't have money, one, nobody's going to really take you seriously. And two, you can't really do shit anyway. Hence why nobody's going to take you seriously. Nobody can take a man seriously if he's ineffective. So all this talk about money doesn't have no value and you don't own it and it's fake and fiat and all that, go tell that shit to your landlord when rent's due. Or tell that shit to your bank when the mortgage payments due. Or tell that shit to the finance company when your car notes due. See what happens. Guarantee you you'll find that fucking money. And mind you, a lot of people that say this goofy shit, they say it and then they say it on the internet at night as if they're so smart and well informed. And then they get up in the morning and go punch a clock for that very same fake money they were just talking about the night before. And they don't even realize how asinine it is. Like, yes, we know it's fiat currency. Yes, we know it's not backed by nothing. But unfortunately, the vast majority of people out there believe that it does have value. They place value on it and they trade goods and services for that money. So in order to gain access to these goods and services that so many of us need because we've become dependent on them, well, you got to have money, unfortunately. I wish it wasn't so. I wish I could give you a bushel of grapes that I've grown in my beautiful vineyard, for that Ferrari in your driveway. But unfortunately, it don't work like that. That is not reality. That is not reality. Yeah, you sure are smarty mix smarts. And what about stock? You see, the thing is, you really got to put thought into like, how effective is what I'm saying? What I'm saying, how can what I'm saying change anything? Sure, I can tell people how worthless the money is all I want, but is that going to stop them from trying to chase it and buy things with it? Probably not. Probably not. Most likely not. And if it does stop them from pursuing it in order to buy things with it, that would make them a fool because they'll be suckering themselves. You'll basically be suckering them into a life of poverty and despair, being stuck in survival mode and limiting their potential for growth because all the time they could spend researching or sharing knowledge, they'll have to spend trying to find something to eat. I encourage people to make money. I don't care if it's fake or not. What I do know is it has real value because it can buy real things. And yes, it can buy happiness. Don't listen to those lying motherfuckers talking about money can't buy happiness. Yes, it can. It can buy a wave runner. Have you ever seen anybody upset on a wave runner? I haven't. Just saying. But let's continue. So not only has George Soros bought off the courts and in a lot of these liberal cities bought off the mayors, the city councils, and so on, his organization was also behind the Black Lives Matter movement of 2020, which basically morphed from a normal anti-police violence protest into a big race riot that lasted almost all summer of 2020. And instead of teaching people the reality of life, the true history of our world, and the importance of banding together, they teach them a bunch of nonsense, fill their heads with all this victimhood crap, and then you get situations like this where you got all these broke ass idiots marching in the street holding up signs as if it's going to change anything, and it changes nothing. Because I don't know if you guys remember, but all throughout 2020, while the Black Lives Matter riots were going on, I seem to recall there were still several black men that got their asses shot off by the police. So what did they help? What did they fix? Not a damn thing. But they destroyed a bunch of shit, though. And then they fill your head with all this dumbass propaganda, and then they have you protesting and advocating for stupid shit that doesn't help you. Like, look at this clown. No justice in the capitalist courts. No justice in the liberal courts. We've seen that shit and what they did to Trump and what they did to Trump supporters and conservatives. So it ain't capitalist courts, it's liberal courts. There's no such thing as capitalist courts because due process has very little to do with the economic system under which we live. The only connection to due process in the economic system is that major components of that process or major components that are required in that process for you to succeed cost money. And it's really not a capitalist court. It's more of a corporatist court because it's extortionary. The courts take in way more money than they pay out. And usually when the courts are paying out money, they're taking it in from somebody else. So they fill these people up with all this racial bullshit and have them take to the streets as if they're solving something when they're just wasting their energy, spinning their wheels, and spewing propaganda. And all that energy in 2020, where was it in 2021 when they were forcing this bioweapon they called the COVID vaccine on us? Where were they? Oh, that's right. They were busy advocating for it. This Jamaican clown right here, this old jerk chicken curry goat eating motherfucker right here. I like curry goat. It's actually pretty good. He's a Jamaican politician, and he says, honor our ancestors by taking the vaccine. Dude, your ancestors never took vaccines. How the hell are you honoring your ancestors by participating in some modern day Satanism? How? But you see, the whole honor our ancestors, that's a play on their racial identity. That's what that is. That's a play on their cultural identity. And I'm pretty sure, because he says it with such confidence, I'm pretty sure there's people in Jamaica that believe this man and actually went and took that shit, and now they're no longer with us. Magic Johnson returned to Everett High School Saturday to campaign for Joe Biden. All these sellouts everywhere, all around the world. Just sellout after sellout after sellout. And they take these celebrities, they enrich them, they give them king status, basically, and then they send them out to push the propaganda and push the agenda and use their influence to sucker as many people into the slaughterhouse as possible. Does this not sound like the work of a group of people who would destroy the world just to hide technology and enslave the people of the world? It sure does to me. I don't know about you. Minnesota Attorney General Keith Ellison. Nobody really knows who's driving the protest violence. Just lying. We do know who's driving the protest violence. It was the deep state. It was George Soros and the Democratic Party. But of course, they're going to advocate for the violence, drive the violence, and then get on TV and pretend as if they don't know what's going on. Play dumb. And it's funny. There's a running joke in conservative circles that we say it's why is it impossible for a Democrat to play stupid? You know why? Because they're already stupid. They don't have to pretend. They don't have to pretend. And aside from all the racial bullshit, they also made it a point to sell the idea of abortion to black women. And the Democratic Party has done such a great job at it that for several years in New York City and many other liberal cities, the records seem to indicate that there were more black babies aborted than born. In fact, if abortion never existed and all those millions of black babies were never aborted, the black population would be almost double or triple what it is right now. And not only has abortion been a scourge on the black population, it actually amounted to genocide, essentially. It's affecting women of other races as well who are participating in this crap. But the reason why I mentioned black people is because, well, look who they're using to promote it. Mama's having an abortion and the kids are celebrating like mama's going to kill my little sibling and I'm happy about it. What kind of sick, demented crap is this? But you see what color the people are they used to represent that bullshit? And the reason why, again, it affects black, I always emphasize it amongst black people with the abortion thing, is because if you think about it, every other race of people within this country has experienced continuous and steady population growth. Every group of people. And the one group of people who have been here before everybody else got here, whose population should have grown the largest because they had the longest amount of time to grow, has remained consistently well below 20% of the population. And if you look up the actual definition of genocide, it's not just the elimination of an entire racial ethnic group of people. It's actually the control of their population growth. That's genocide. So before we get mad at Israel about their genocide in Gaza, we have a genocide taking place right here in America, and black people are the victims of it. It's called abortion. And if you don't believe that abortion was designed specifically for black genocide, look at this. New York Post reports July 22nd, 2020. Planned Parenthood finally admits that its founder was a horrific bigot. Yes, indeed. Margaret Sanger was a huge racist. She used to go speak at Klan rallies and shit. As a matter of fact, this was one of her most famous quotes. We do not want word to get out that we want to exterminate the Negro population. Margaret Sanger. Like Adolf Hitler was a eugenicist. Eugenics posits that elite members of society have a responsibility to sterilize or kill humans that they deem are unfit to breed. Sanger called non-whites and those with diseases and disabilities human weeds and human beings who never should have been born. The spirit of Sanger lives on in Planned Parenthood, whose clinics are strategically planted in poor minority communities. So when all these Democrats are acting like abortion is a black woman's savior and all that shit, all they're doing is aiding and abetting the genocide, the Planned Parenthood genocide. That's what they're doing. But so many people are busy believing that Republicans are all racist that they won't listen to the conservatives when we say, hey, history is on our side. The facts is on our side when we tell you abortion was meant to genocide you. And it's funny because the same people that made a big stink about the Supreme Court overturning Roe v. Wade are the same people mad at Trump about trying to depose Maduro from Venezuela for making it a narco state and stealing the election. They're the same people that wanted the borders open. And it's a consistent trend where everything anti-human and anti-American and anti-justice and anti-merit they support. And that's because these people are the losers of society. So instead of trying to get up and do something for themselves, they'd rather sit back and watch the world burn because they don't have the fortitude to successfully participate in it. So they'd rather just destroy it. They're like they're worse than the kid that because he's losing the basketball game, he'll get mad and take his ball and go home. They're the kid that would pull out a knife and stab the basketball and everybody else on the court. That's them. And if you don't believe me that the Democratic Party is racist, not only are they the real racist, but they're pedophiles too. Look at this shit. 50 Cent endorses Donald Trump for president. He says, I don't care if Trump doesn't like black people, he wrote. And that's not all he wrote. He said, I don't care if Trump doesn't like black people. I like his economic policies or his tax policies or something like that, is what he said. Barnes says, but money can't buy contentment. That is true, Barnes. Money cannot buy contentment because contentment's not for sale. And it's true because no matter how much money you got, there's always a hunger to get more. It actually does the opposite of make you content. And that's where the unhappiness comes in. So if you're able to be content with the money you have, you win the game. 50 Cent retracts support for 45 following severe backlash. And this is how the Democrat Party operates. You're not allowed to think for yourself. The minute you start thinking for yourself, you become villainized and you get smeared. And this almost destroyed 50 Cent's career until he walked it back. And Chelsea Handler goes full on racist over 50 Cent's support of Trump. I had to remind him he was a black person. You see how racist these liberals are? And nobody called her racist for saying that. The white woman telling the black man she had to remind him he was black so he can't support Trump. Like, how insulting is that? Really, how insulting is that? And not one single Democrat that calls everything racist had one word to say about this racist bitch saying this shit about 50. It's the same thing when they say voter ID laws is racist because black people are too inept to get IDs. That's racist. Or when they say, "Oh, we can't kick all the immigrants out because who's going to clean the toilets and pick the fruits in the fields and shit?" Like that's all they do. No, a lot of them come here and deal big cocaine. So you should add that to the list. Who's going to clean the toilets, pick the fruits in the fields and deal all the kilos? That's what they should be saying. That would be more accurate. But the racist Democrats doing what they've always done for hundreds of years, be racist. Not only are they racist, but they're a bunch of perverts too. They use black people as pawns for their influence, and they're all into the homosexuality and the pedophilia. In fact, the Democratic Party is the only political party that I remember that has produced a president with a man pretending to be his wife. On the left is Michelle Obama. On the right is Mike Tyson. I would have thought it was the other way around. Honestly, that is a big back. Big back, big back, big back, big back. My back is big and my dress is tight, and the flaps are showing too. I can spar with Mike Tyson all day because you know I got the moves. Big back, big back. That's a big ass back. It's a big ass back. Golly. That's crazy. That's crazy when you really see it. Like when we say Michelle Obama is a man, this is what we mean. This is what the fuck we mean. That is a dude. Okay? But they're pedophiles and perverts. Non-binary singer Sam Smith, who actually started out as a man and now he's some weirdo. He gets insanely creepy tattoo of a little boy in high heels and underwear. Yes, this man got this pedophilic shit tattooed on him. Tattooed on him permanently. On him. And that whole LGBT non-bi, it's all just cover for pedophilia. That's why they're into all types of weird sexualities, because if they can get society to accept all of their perversions, it wouldn't be that hard to slip pedophilia in there because they've already perverted the majority of society. That's their goal. That's their aim. That's their plan. And it's not only with the celebrities, it's all levels of the liberal establishment. Kentucky principal investigated after getting lap dance at homecoming event. And this was a few years ago. And this guy, his name is Happy something. That's not his real name. His nickname is Happy. And look how happy he is with that boy wearing girls' clothes twerking on him. That is some sick shit. And it was a whole beauty pageant they had at the school where boys were dressed as girls and the girls were dressed as Hooter girls, and the boys were twerking on the male staff members. There's a whole video out there. It's in a town called Hazard, Kentucky. Couldn't have picked a more fitting name. And look at the students in the background that are not participating. They look freaked the fuck out. Like this guy right here, he just don't want to be there. He's like, what the hell is this? But it was a public display of pedophilia. They were pushing the limits to see how far they could get away with it, how much they can get away with. Because if they get away with this, the next thing you know, they're going to be having orgy pep rallies in the school gymnasium. That's where that shit's headed. These are some sick ass people. And that's why it's so easy for the mainstream media to get them to believe all the bullshit, because they're targeting people who already have mental deficiencies and already believe in bullshit. Because any grown man that would think this is even mildly appropriate for a school setting is absolutely out of his mind. Absolutely out of his mind. This is some Sodom and Gomorrah. They're trying to turn the world into Sodom and Gomorrah. That's what they're trying to do. And remember who they elected as president when they stole the election in 2020? Forgive me for the graphic images. They're a bit graphic, but I try to blur them out as much as I can. Yeah, that's Joe Biden. And this is from Hunter Biden's laptop. Everybody's tripping about the damn Epstein files. Fuck the Epstein files. What about Hunter Biden's laptop? What about that? And as you guys trip, and as everybody trips about the Epstein files, where Trump is mentioned by the pedophiles, but he's never in direct contact with any of these pedophiles. He's never incriminated by any of these pedophiles. It's all lies. Here you have real evidence of actual Democrats doing sick shit, and they made this man the president. They stole the election for this man to become president and supported him. So they'll try to link Trump to Epstein all day long, but they'll never show you no shit like this though. They'll try to bury this. And that slimeball Ben Shapiro, one of those rhino Republicans like the Bushes that give Republicans a bad name and give the wokey dokes the ability to say Democrats and Republicans are two wings of the same bird. No, not necessarily. It's just a few scumbags in the Republican Party that we're slowly getting rid of. And Ben Shapiro has essentially been canceled. Like, nobody supports Ben Shapiro anymore, except for, of course, the retards. Why war in Iraq is right for America. There's literally no legitimate reason. There was no legitimate reason for America to be at war with Iraq. But somehow, Ben Shapiro found a way to cook up a narrative as to why American soldiers should be dying over in Iraq. Mind you, that little weasel ain't never been in a fist fight his whole life. Ben Shapiro is the definition of a chump, a sucker, and a weasel. He's one of those scumbags that would like fuck with you in school and shit, and then when you punch him in the face, he'll run to the principal and play victim. He's one of them. Why does it actually matter who shot JFK? Well, it matters who shot JFK, Ben Shapiro, because your people were behind it, Ben Shapiro. But of course, because his people were behind it, he wants to downplay it. Why does it matter who shot JFK? Because it exposes you motherfuckers. That's why it matters. That's why it matters. I never said anything about Candace, what about stock? But you know what? Candace has way more credibility than all these fuckers. Derek Evans, breaking CIA officer says bank records show Senator Lindsey Graham is laundering money from the Ukraine war back into his own personal bank accounts. CIA officer says it's significant amounts of money being laundered back to Lindsey Graham. Another slimeball, rhino Republican, and there's many more. In fact, I did a whole stream on my Rumble page talking about the Republicans against Trump. And I went down the whole list of the never Trumpers and everybody else that were supposed to be supporting Trump in 2016 because they're members of his party, but they chose to support the Democrat rather than support Trump. That's how big of traitors these people are. So when you say Democrats and Republicans are two wings of the same bird, there's a select few Republicans that fit that bill, but not every Republican does. Elon Musk had to remind Chuck Schumer that Doge found tens of millions in payments to his companies from various government agencies after Schumer accused Musk of stealing bread from American tables. Yeah, when the Doge investigations were going on, Chuck Schumer and the rest of the Democrats were accusing Elon Musk of stealing. Mind you, he was auditing the whole federal government for free, as he says here in his statement. He says, I provide tens of thousands of jobs and did a full audit of the United States government for free, said Musk. I think Senator Schumer should worry more about his own fraud and abuse of power. Yeah, of course. What about stock? Choose your heroes wisely is pretty good advice. In fact, it's right in line with what Q said when Q said, be careful who you follow. It's absolutely true. But Elon Musk's statement to Chuck Schumer right here, this goes to show you that even though we're not seeing a lot from the Doge investigations, those criminal referrals have been made to DOJ. DOJ is simply taking their time with them because timing is everything. These people will be brought down and brought to justice when the time comes. The time has not come yet because there's still more scenes in the movie that have to play out. And for the people that can't understand why it's taken so long, understand this. It's been 10 years and we've gotten this far in working against in working to dismantle a system that has been established on Earth for thousands of years. So if we were able to make this much progress in 10 years, that's actually moving at light speed. So when you start getting those impatient feelings of when is it going to happen? I need to see arrest, blah, 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 blah. Just remember, for the last 1,000 years, you and your ancestors were living under the thumb of these people. So respect the process. Let Trump do what he does best. Let him finagle the enemy. Let him trap the enemy. Let him do what he has to do. Stop being a hater, because that's what the establishment wants. They want you to hate on Trump so you don't listen to him, so you don't pay attention to what he's doing. They want you to be mad at him for trying to rebuild America's military, when in fact what helped destroy the Tartarian Empire was they were more peaceful people. They were more focused on technology and development and innovating. They were a bunch of nerds. They weren't warriors. So what the elites did in order to take over Tartaria and destroy parts of Tartaria, they raised up warriors. They raised up warriors so the warriors can go in, enslave the people, slaughter who they need to slaughter, and take over the technology and keep it for themselves. Then they destroyed everything. And other Tartarian civilizations who came under attack, they destroyed the technology themselves so it wouldn't fall into the hands of the attackers. So this takedown of the deep state is actually monumental, and it's moving at light speed compared to the grand scheme of the timeline in which this deep state has existed. Why CEOs are stepping down. 2020's major resignations explained. Now, there were several articles back in 2020 talking about these thousands of CEOs stepping down. And the explanations were all weird and didn't really make much sense, because these companies were actually operating at their heights. They were reaching financial milestones that they had never seen before. So these CEOs, it would have actually benefited them to stay in position and reap the benefits of being the CEO that brought the company this much success. But thousands of them started walking away. And what that was a result of was the mass arrest by the military. These people were being indicted in the criminal civilian courts, and the military were picking up the cases. And for others, they were being indicted by the military and brought up on charges, similar to the way Mark Kelly is being recalled to duty so he could face court-martial. This is why these CEOs were stepping down. And a lot of these CEOs, we don't know them, or we haven't seen their faces. So how would we know who they are anyway? And this document right here is actually the indictment document of George H.W. Bush. Remember when Trump went to the funeral and handed out the papers to George H.W. Bush's H.W.'s funeral, and handed out those envelopes? You know what was in those envelopes? I'll tell you exactly what was in those envelopes. What was in those envelopes were indictments for everybody. Indictments for everybody. So let's go to the George Bush indictment, and I'll show you. I'll read the top headers so you guys can see what it actually says. In the Arkansas Supreme Court for the Eastern District of Arkansas, Robert Blair, Thomas Deegan, Peter Otrowski, Jeremy Lowe, Don Bailey, Stephen E. Curry, in private capacity by special appearance only. That's the plaintiff. Those are the, I guess these are the prosecutors, if I'm not mistaken, or maybe witnesses. But they're the plaintiff, and the defendant is George Herbert Walker Bush of Carlyle Group, and George Herbert Walker Bush, private, as in private citizen, George Herbert Walker Bush et al. With prejudice. Memorandum for the order on the formal prosecution of money laundering, racketeering to violate FCPA and change mining laws. Right? So here's the criminal action, full punitive damages, common grand jury demand concerning money laundering, conspiracy to violate Logan Act, and human trafficking under RICO. Okay. And you see how they differentiate between George Herbert Walker Bush of Carlyle Group, and they put it in all caps, and then his name as a person with the first letter capitalized and everything else lowercase. So this was a real constitutional court that handled this, because in most court filings, if you ever had a court case in your local county, they would usually write your name like the corporate entity, all caps, the way it's written on your driver's license. And of course, George Bush was indicted before a formal tribunal grand jury. Now, here's the interesting part, because this is a civilian case in the civilian courts, right? But I'm going to show you something. I'm going to show you proof of what I've been saying all along, because what I've been saying all along is a lot of these people that catch these charges in civilian courts and appear to have been let go, what we don't know is that a lot of times they were let go by the civilian courts so the military courts can pick up the cases. And if you don't believe me, just watch. Da-da-da-da. Don't believe me, just watch. Yeah, Obama got one of those envelopes. So this law right here is, can you guys see that, or is it too small? Guess I got to go back to the big gallery. Or maybe if I go full screen, maybe you guys will be able to see it. Let me see. Should be able to see it better now. And it's Article S8, Article.S8.C14.3. Trial and punishment of civilians and dependents. Courts martial. That's in the military court. Article 1, Section 8, Clause 14. The Congress shall have power to make rules for the government and regulation of land and naval forces. Over the years, the Supreme Court has narrowed the scope of persons Congress may constitutionally subject to the Uniform Code of Military Justice under its Clause 14 powers. In the United States, I don't know what that says there. Ex-retired Tom V. Toth V. Corals. Damn, I can't. That shit's so fucking small. Hold on a second. God, I hate having to jump between galleries, but I have to jump between galleries because that shit is so damn small. It's ridiculous. Let me see if I can find that slide. And I got to jump through everything all over again. Just a waste of damn time, I tell you. I will get to it. We'll get to it. So basically, when it comes to the Tartarian Empire, what we're seeing is or the Tartarian Alliance, which I believe it is what we're seeing is the Tartarians, who were defeated by the deep state, are now starting to push back and fight back, and they're gaining a lot of ground because they have the assistance of the three most powerful militaries in the world: America, Russia, and China. All right. Toth v. Quarles. The court held that an honorably discharged former soldier charged with having committed murder during military service in Korea could not be tried by court-martialed, but under the Constitution could be charged in federal court. In Reed v. Covert, the court, after initially upholding the constitutionality of the court-martial jurisdiction, reached the opposite conclusion on rehearing, holding that court-martial jurisdiction was lacking, at least in peacetime, to try civilian dependents of service personnel for capital crimes committed outside the United States. Subsequently, The court extended its ruling to civilian dependents overseas charged with non-capital crimes and to civilian employees of the military charged with either capital or non-capital crimes. That's the part you need to pay attention to. Civilian employees of the military. And guess what? Guess who that also includes? The commander-in-chief. So these former presidents that are being charged, like Obama and Bush and the rest of them, they are former employees of the military because they are former commanders in chief. So it applies to them. Now let's go back to that slide, that gallery there, because I have the slides in order. Hopefully you'll be able to see the next few slides. So I asked Google, of course, Google AI, can military courts take over civilian cases? Very simple question, right? And this was the answer that it gave me. Military courts primarily handle cases involving service members under the UCMJ, Uniform Code of Military Justice, but they can sometimes assert jurisdiction over civilians, especially during wartime or when civilians have strong ties to the military, like dependents overseas or those accompanying troops. Those Supreme Court rulings have limited this, generally requiring a significant service connection, like, I don't know, being the commander in chief, perhaps, with the UCMJ applying where civilian courts aren't available or practical. When military courts have jurisdiction over civilians, during wartime and deployments, during declared or undeclared wars, the UCMJ can extend to civilians accompanying forces overseas, like in Iraq or Afghanistan. And what they're not telling you is that it can also extend to government employees here in the United States. And since 9/11, we have been in a state of declared war. Thus, many civilians have been subject to military justice. And it's thanks to George Bush and his administration in their participation in carrying out 9/11 that the country has remained in a state of declared war. So essentially, when Trump took office, he used their state of declared war in order to exercise his military power against the very players that instituted the state of declared war illegally. Brilliantly played. Talk about a Uno reverse. It's the same way that Trump used in 2020 all the infrastructure and the closed down Walmart stores that Obama was going to use when Obama was setting up for when Hillary came in and did the gun confiscation, that they were going to lock all the patriots in. Trump turned around and used those same holding areas and transport depots to execute his mass arrests and ship those large numbers of suspects out of the country off to Guantanamo Bay and other black sites for military tribunals and executions. Talk about the Uno reverse. That's part of the reason why, that's the main reason why they were so hateful and mad at Trump before he even got elected, because they were scared. Martial law. In extreme situations where martial law is declared, military courts might try civilians for crimes undermining government stability. And guess what's happening in those cities where Trump's deploying the National Guard and special ops units attached to them? Soft martial law, but martial law nonetheless, which means that the military is able to make arrests, and they are making arrests. It's clear as day right here in the literature. So when I tell you the National Guard deployments is to provide cover for the special ops units to go arrest these funders and these organizers of these anti-ICE protests, well, there it is written in black and white that this is very much possible. It doesn't confirm that it's actually happening, but what it does confirm is what I told you is actually happening. There's a very good possibility that it could be happening because the law allows for it. The circumstances seem to justify it. and service connection test. While weakened, while weakened, the idea that a civilian's crime must have a clear link to the military, example, committing an offense against another service member, can still establish jurisdiction. Right. The Supreme Court ruling against Trump sending in the National Guard to Chicago was to set the stage for him to escalate the military force that he's sending into Chicago under stricter circumstances. In other words, it opens the door for him to declare a state of national emergency and deploy whatever military units he wants to deploy. So the Supreme Court, by ruling against him, actually opened the door for more opportunities for him. Post-service offenses, and again, this is when the military courts can take over civilian cases. Article 3A of the UCMJ allows for trying individuals for offenses committed while in service, even if they've since been discharged, though this has faced legal challenges. Limitations and civilian courts. General rule, military courts usually focus on service members. Civilian federal state courts handle most non-military cases. Yeah, most, not all, most. You see the key word right there? That means that the military courts do pick up civilian cases at times. Supreme Court rulings, cases like Toth v. Carlos and Reed v. Covert limited military jurisdiction over civilians, emphasizing constitutional protections and narrowing when courts martials are appropriate for non-service members. And what it's narrowed to is what we discussed in the previous slides, which these former presidents and these former members of Congress all fit the bill. And this is why we've seen members of Congress be replaced, like Nancy Pelosi. Comity, not comedy as in jokes, but committee, C-O-M-I-T-Y. Generally, a policy of committee respect between jurisdictions prevents military prosecution for the same act already tried in a civilian court, though this isn't absolute. In essence, military courts can take over in specific, often extraordinary circumstances where civilian jurisdiction is unavailable or inappropriate. But the trend is towards limiting military reach over civilians. And that's why Trump is using the military courts against these crooked civilians covertly, because he doesn't want to set a precedence and make it the norm. Because if the wrong people get back in power, they'll then have the power to use the military against their political opposition. So in wiping out the deep state, part of wiping out the deep state is maintaining the limits on what the law allows Trump to do. So that way the rules remain intact. The integrity of the legal system remains intact. Now, while Trump is using the military to go after his enemies, go after America's enemies, our enemies, who are also his enemies, he's also now moving to pardon Edward Snowden. Edward Snowden, I believe he's been locked up this whole time, but I'm not sure because last I heard he was hiding out in a foreign country and that was Julian Assange. I believe Ed Snowden is locked up. Trump's looking to pardon Snowden. And Ed Snowden is the guy who exposed the entire government spy apparatus. And the reason why I believe Trump is pardoning Ed Snowden is not only because Ed Snowden is viewed as an American hero, but Ed Snowden also has knowledge of the spy apparatus. And since Trump has been making a big deal, which is a big deal, about Obama and his administration spying on the Trump campaign and then continuing to spy on Trump shortly after his election, well, Edward Snowden would be the guy to consult on how they did it and how they prove it. So Ed Snowden might actually be testifying in the movie trial because Obama's already been gone already. But Ed Snowden might be a state's witness in the trials against the Obama administration for spying on the president. Yeah, he's been in Russia. That's right. He's in Russia. And ain't it funny that an American who was on the run from the American deep state finds himself hiding out in Russia and getting safe haven in Russia? And it was the whole Obama administration and what we now know to be the deep state that was pissed off at Edward Snowden. Because Snowden exposed them. And they were mad about it. Now, let's talk about these historians, right? So historians explain why men in old-timey portraits always had one hand in their jackets. And this was the article that I mentioned to you guys in the last show, where the historian went through all these cockamamie reasons why these guys do this pose and never once mentioned Freemasonry in the entire article. When everybody knows, Masons and non-Masons alike, it's not a secret. Everybody knows that this is a Masonic hand gesture known as the hidden hand. So when you have historians blatantly lying like this, when you come across articles such as the one that I'm about to show you right now, it kind of makes you scratch your head a little bit. Historian Ann Applebaum breaks down what Trump's alignment with Russia really means. Well, what Trump's alignment with Russia really means is this is the return of the Golden Age, and the Tartarian Empire is going to be reestablished. Maybe not the same way it was established before, but the principles, the freedoms, the technology, the fairness, the merit-based system, all that's coming back, and these cheaters and these riggers who have rigged the system against the people are all being removed from power. And they have to be removed from power permanently, and their system has to be demolished so they can never, ever, ever find their way back into power. So let's see what this small hat had to say about Trump and Putin. Because again, they keep telling you Trump and Putin are enemies, but they're really not. President Trump's cozying up to Russian President Vladimir Putin. And this was back on June 28th, 2019. This is an old article basically proving that Trump and Vladimir Putin have an alliance. Marks a significant departure from decades of U.S. foreign policy. For years, U.S. policies have been in place to isolate Russia over its full-scale invasion of Ukraine. But the Trump administration is now poised to make a deal with the Kremlin to end the war without Ukraine having much to say. Secretary of State Marco Rubio. Oh, no, this article is not from 2019. This is Trump and Putin meeting in 2019. This article is from February 24th, 2025. Let me correct the record. It's from 2020, February of this year. Okay. Marco Rubio and National Security Advisor Mike Waltz held talks with Russian officials last week to begin hammering out a Russia-Ukraine peace deal. Ukrainian officials say they were not invited, and Mike Waltz was a rat in Trump's administration that got exposed through the Signal app. And yeah, he's out of there. Meanwhile, President Trump is falsely blaming Ukraine, a U.S. ally, for starting the war 3 years ago. But Ukraine did start the war by trying to genocide ethnic Russians in Crimea. So it's not a false claim, but of course you let the small hat tell it. It's a false claim. Even before these events, Trump was already showing willingness to treat other allies adversarially. And those allies are allies of the deep state. So when we had deep state presidents in office, those so quote unquote allies were actually treated like allies. And now that we have a patriot in office, those quote unquote deep state allies are now being treated like adversaries, because they are, including those from NATO, a partnership formed after the defeat of Nazi Germany in World War II. And of course, that partnership was spearheaded by the small hats. Historian and writer for The Atlantic, and The Atlantic is a liberal toilet paper magazine, Ann Applebaum says the departure from traditional U.S. foreign policy is radical, given that Russia is a daily threat to the rest of Europe. And Trump don't give a fuck about Europe. Trump has an alliance with Russia. Applebaum, who last year published the Pulitzer Prize winning Autocracy Incorporated, The Dictators Who Want to Rule the World, as she literally works for the dictators who actually do rule the world. So that's completely ironic. Adds that Trump's maneuvering is raising concerns not just in Europe, but also in the capitals of allies around the world. She shared these thoughts and more in an interview with NPR's Layla Fidel about what Trump's approach means for global stability. What Trump's willingness to work with a dictator signals to the rest of the world. U.S. foreign policy has, for about 80 years, been based on a network of alliances and institutions that allowed the country to project power to create zones of prosperity and, of course, zones of insane poverty, to enjoy trade with like-minded partners, Applebaum said, noting that it extended mainly to Europe but also worked in Asia. Trump is effectively signaling that he's no longer interested in hearing from European allies, Applebaum said, and that he's aligning with a power that is a daily threat to Europe. She notes that there are frequent incidents of sabotage in the Baltic Sea and almost daily cyber attacks across the continent from Russian hacking groups. By doing that, Trump is saying, I do not care anymore about alliances. Well, he's not really saying that. He's just saying, I don't care about those deep state alliances because I'm not deep state. That's what he's really saying. I'm not interested in your opinions. I'm going to do a deal with this dictator over your head, Applebaum said. Well, he's the president. He has the power to do that. And that's a message that is heard not just in every European capital, but in every allied capital around the planet as a sign that the U.S. is changing. Right, the U.S. is changing. It's changing back to a constitutional republic from the liberal corporate shithole that it had become. So yes, it very much so is changing for the better. Shifting away from allies raises economic concerns and questions about stability. Trump's approach so far has so many implications that they're almost hard to think through, Applebaum said. What happens to our trade relationships with Europe and with Asia? What about the U.S. companies that have enjoyed special favor in those markets? Applebaum said. She notes that U.S. defense companies, nuclear power companies, and various other utility providers have been welcomed by those countries because as a way of expressing their fealty to the United States. And then there are concerns about peace. What happens to treaties, not just on commerce, but treaties on the laws of war, Applebaum wonders. All those things that have governed U.S. behavior and allied behavior all over the world for 80 years now disappear. Right. So in other words, what Applebaum is saying, Trump's alliance with Russia is causing the deep state alliance to lose power. And that's exactly what we, the people, want. We want the deep state to lose its power because the deep state does not serve the people. The deep state serves the deep state. The deep state serves its own people. You understand? So every time you see an article and it starts off with historian says, take it with a grain of salt because historians lie. Now, August 15th, 2025, we're going to fast forward in time from from the Applebaum article. Trump, and this is from firstpost.com. Trump-Putin summit in Alaska. How the U.S. Secret Service is preparing for a high-stakes meeting. So before all this went down with Venezuela, Trump had a meeting with Putin, wouldn't you know? And what do you think they discussed at that meeting? They made arrangements for how Trump was going to handle Venezuela. And that's why Russia hasn't threatened the United States, pointed guns at the United States, ordered the United States to stand down or anything. Because this was part of the play. Posture as an enemy, but act as an ally. In other words, posture yourself as an enemy, but don't do anything to impede my progress. Now, here's a very interesting article to show that these alliances are being made because you got the Russ, you got the Chinese, and you got the United States of America, which basically is representative of North America. That's basically the entire Tartarian Empire right there. And look at this. Republic of China Army deploys newly delivered American Abrams tanks. Wait a minute. I thought China and America were enemies. Why is America selling China tanks? Because the Tartarian alliance is not trying to make the same mistake they made before the last reset, which was giving up their guns, being overly peaceful, not arming themselves against the enemy, and playing the whole non-violent, let's be peaceful, kumbaya shit until the directed energy weapons were pointed at their cathedrals and melted them. Their sound wave weapons were targeted at the ground and vibrated the ground till buildings sank and crumbled and buried people alive. So this Patriot Alliance, or what I would call the Tartarian Alliance, is not making the same mistake. What they're doing is they're building up their military strength. They're building up their military strength so the same controllers that caused the last reset won't have the power to do it this time. And the reason why they caused the reset is because people were becoming too wealthy. People were becoming too powerful. Their power was being challenged. They had too much competition, so they had to eliminate the competition. But unfortunately, they were not successful in eliminating the competition completely, even though they were able to eliminate and outwit the competition for almost a century, if not longer. But now, because they've been in power and ruling for so long, and they've pissed off so many people around the world, the whole world is turning on them. Now, who do I think was responsible for the reset and the destruction of the world to basically enslave everybody and steal the technology? If you really want to know, honestly, I think it was the Khazars. I believe it was the Khazars. The Khazarians were the ones that destroyed the Tartarian Empire. Now, here's proof of America-Chinese alliance. We got proof of American-Russian alliances too. Check this out. This is a Black Hawk helicopter spotted flying around in 2020, possibly during one of those mass arrest raids. And if you look closely at what's circled in red, what you'll notice is there's a Punisher logo, excuse me, stamped on the back of that helicopter. And if you know what the Punisher logo stands for, or if you don't know what the Punisher logo stands for, it simply stands for justice, right? So there's Punisher logo, American Black Hawk 2020. Fast forward to 2022, Punisher logo on Russian Spetsnaz uniform in Ukraine. This is not a coincidence. This is proof positive of an alliance. And this Ukraine operation is part of the reason why Trump had to allow the 2020 election to be stolen and the Biden administration to take over. Because the military was in control of DC while the Biden show was being broadcast to the public. And Russia was deliberately allowed by the United States to attack Ukraine because Trump, in his anti-human trafficking operations, became aware of Ukraine being a major hub for child trafficking and organ harvesting. That's part of the reason why the Nazis that Obama installed as a government in Ukraine in 2014, that's why they were genociding the ethnic Russians, because they were trafficking the women and the children. They were slaughtering the men, trafficking the women and the children, and slaughtering them for their organs. And that's the reason why Putin is so gung-ho on taking the entire eastern Ukraine, because that's where the ethnic Russians live, because that is rightfully part of Russian territory. So this Ukraine war is all about Russia protecting their own people, which is what a government is supposed to do. Now, why is Russia such a desirable ally? Let's get to that. I don't think you guys can read what's on that slide, so we'll bounce to the big gallery real quick. Because that slide is very interesting. It's a very interesting piece of information about the Russians and how they move. And this is why the Khazars couldn't defeat them. This is why the small hats can't defeat them. This is why the deep state couldn't defeat them. Because they're uniformed in their goal. There ain't no 50% of the population supporting the bullshit like over here in America. The Russians ain't with that shit. They jump and beat the shit out of these rainbow motherfuckers every time they see them flying that flag because it's a pedophile flag and they know it. They don't play that transgender bullshit in Russia. Check this out. Have you ever wondered why Muslim terrorists don't kidnap Russians? In 1986, Muslim extremists kidnapped 4 Soviet diplomats in Beirut. The kidnappers demanded Moscow's support for pro-Syrian fighters in Lebanon. Moscow ignored them. The Muslim kidnappers then killed one of the hostages to show that they were serious. The KGB, and remember, Vladimir Putin is a former KGB agent, so he knows all the ins and outs of how they roll. That's why they haven't been able to assassinate him either. The KGB then kidnapped a family member of one of the Hezbollah leaders. He was castrated, then killed. The Hezbollah leader then received the package. The package contained a few intimate body parts and a note saying the leader's other family members would meet the same fate if the Muslim extremists didn't release the other Russian prisoners and never try that with Russia again. The 3 remaining Russian diplomats were immediately released, and Muslims haven't kidnapped any Russians since. See? Russia don't play. And Trump don't play. That's why he gets along so well with the Russians. You see? And that was the spirit that the Tartarians of the past were lacking. Yes, the BRICS nations are our allies. Yes, they are. And our traditional allies like the European Union, NATO, and all those assholes, we're no longer friendly with them. That's why Trump cut their funding and made them pay foot their own bill. Because I don't know if you guys noticed, but all the countries that were allied with the deep state administrations of the past, if you look at the direction those countries are going, what direction you see them going in? No free speech, pedophile rights, transgenitalism, mass poverty, overwhelming crime, open borders, lest we not forget. Oh, shit, let me plug my computer in before it actually dies on me again. And that's what all those countries that we call our so-called allies are pushing. And Trump's not with that shit, and America's not with that shit. Yeah, vaccine or jail. Thank you, Brian Butler. Now, George H.W. Bush, 1992, he says we're protecting Kuwait, not chasing oil. George Bush, 1992, says we bring freedom to Iraq. We don't need oil. And then Trump in 2025 says we are invading Venezuela for oil. They stole our oil. And the reason why Trump says they stole our oil is this. They didn't really, take the oil from us and we're just strong arming and taking it back. Well, for one, compared to the Bushes, Trump's actually keeping it real. Like, yeah, we taking that motherfucking oil. What the hell y'all gonna do about it? Not a goddamn thing. That's what you're gonna do. You're gonna sit there and hand it over. And Trump was like, we're keeping the oil, we're keeping the shit, we're keeping all that shit. Like Trump told that reporter, we're keeping everything. We're going to keep the ship too. And the reason why Trump says they stole our oil is because the duly elected president of Venezuela, who was basically overtaken by Maduro, he had trade deals made with the United States where Trump was going to do with Venezuela what he was doing with all the other allied nations around the world. He was going to make deals with them where he would pay them in military equipment so they could beef up their armies and beef up their military in exchange for the oil, so America can use oil, can get good, can get a good oil supply from Venezuela while simultaneously getting rid of our old military equipment so we can start replacing it with the new equipment. But once Maduro stole the election and took over Venezuela and started selling that oil to everybody else, America lost out on that deal. That's why Trump said they stole our oil, because that oil was meant to be sold to America in exchange for military equipment. And the reason why Trump is such a big believer in arming the duly elected governments of these allied nations is because he wants every country in the alliance to have the ability to, one, effectively defend itself, at least until help arrives, and two, make all these countries effective fighting forces with uniformed American-made equipment. So any wars that we get into, our allies will be basically carrying the same caliber bullets as our soldiers. They'll be driving the same tanks as our soldiers. We have all the spare parts and the mechanics that can work on it, and they'll have spare parts and mechanics that can work on it. So he's creating a standardized system of military equipment amongst the alliance. And by the alliance, I mean the Patriot Alliance, which I now seem to believe is the Tartarian Alliance, and we're going to get into why I think that here soon. So we're invading Venezuela for oil. They stole our oil. So Trump is basically doing the work that we all would have liked to have seen from past administrations. But because he's Trump and the media is part of the deep state, they're doing everything they can to demonize him, get you to not like him, get you to not listen to him, make you believe that he's an enemy, because they don't want you to believe that we actually have a fighting chance at winning this thing and defeating the deep state. Now, because Trump is basically doing the Lord's work and doing the people's work, there's been this concerted effort to try to link Trump to Epstein all over again. We've debunked all these Epstein lies back in 2018, 2019, when Trump had Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein indicted. And Jeffrey Epstein did not die in that jail cell. He was rendered to the military. Just like we read, military can take over civilian cases. Well, Jeffrey Epstein's case was one of them. But breaking, the brother of Jeffrey Epstein, Mark Epstein, told FBI his brother was murdered and Trump authorized it. New release document shows. And I believe this release document was fabricated. And I'll show you why. Let me get to the, now I got to jump galleries again. Hope my damn computer don't freeze up. Feels like it's about to. Come on. I'm getting that slow roll response again. I don't know what's going on. Am I frozen? Computer don't. What the hell is going on? All right, something's moving. Come on. Stupid. Okay, now it's trying to move. Okay, here we go. All right. Big gallery, here we come. I should have known something was going to happen when the big gallery started moving slow on me. Should have known. I hope it doesn't turn into a painstaking process to find that slide. Boy, that would suck. All right, here we go. All right. So, Mark Epstein told the FBI his brother was murdered and Trump authorized it. New release document shows. I believe this document is fabricated. I believe it's absolutely fake, and I'll show you why. 6:24 p.m. February 22nd, 2023 at 6:24 p.m. Eastern Time. Mark Epstein, date of birth, blah, 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 cell number, blah, 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 IP address, blah, blah, submitted online. Online tip to the FBI National Threat Operations Center. It says, Jeffrey Epstein was murdered in his jail cell. I have reason to believe he was killed because he was about to name names. I believe President Trump authorized his murder. Now, first of all, why are we believing pedophiles? And why are we listening to the brother of the pedophile who looks like a pedophile himself? Why are we believing these fucking people? Oh, that's right, because it's about Trump and we hate Trump. So we'll believe anybody that has any bad thing to say about Trump, no matter who they are, even if they're a pedophile. So that's what we doing now, America. That's what we're doing now. First things first, I have a brother. And when I talk about my brother, I don't say his first and last name. I either say his first name only or I say my brother. Somebody else wrote this, pretending to be Jeffrey Epstein's brother. Talking about Jeffrey Epstein was murdered in his jail cell. If that's my brother, my statement would have been, my brother was murdered in his jail cell. You see how this shit just don't make no sense? And then I have reason to believe he was killed because he was about to name names. I believe Trump authorized his murder. They didn't even write his right. They put is instead of his. So let me get this straight. Jeffrey Epstein was going to tell on Trump because Trump was involved with Epstein. So why the fuck did Trump even bother having him arrested in the first place? He could have did like every other president did and left him alone and acted like he didn't exist. So everything they say trying to link Trump to Epstein literally makes no sense. Because if any of it were true, Trump would not have bothered with indicting him. It would not have served Trump to indict him and expose himself. Just like all the other presidents that played with Jeffrey Epstein and Jeffrey Epstein's at his island. None of them wanted to indict Jeffrey Epstein because they knew it would expose them. So this is absolute bullshit. And anybody that believes what the brother of this pedophile has to say, you really need to do some soul searching and look in the mirror and figure out who the fuck you really are. Because you hate Trump so much that you're okay with siding with pedophiles. You hate Trump so much that you'd rather side with a pedophile. You hate Trump so much that you would take the word of a pedophile. This is where we at. See, that's why when we call it Trump derangement syndrome, that's why we call it Trump derangement syndrome, because it's a literal sickness. It's a literal sickness that shuts down all cognitive parts of the brain, all cognitive functions of the brain, and they just go into Trump bad, Trump bad. So anything they hear, whether it's a lie, it's completely made up, it's taken out of context, it doesn't matter. their brains will cling on to it because they have to have some evidence that Trump bad. So no matter how goofy the evidence is, no matter how much mental gymnastics they have to do to even claim that this is evidence, they will do it. No matter how many times they have to contradict themselves, go against reality and logic and lie just because they hate Trump, they will do it. That's why we call it Trump derangement syndrome, because these people are deranged. Because you have to be deranged to actually believe that a president who was involved with a pedophile, as you believe, would have that pedophile indicted and risk being exposed so much that now he's got to have him murdered. Does Trump look like an idiot to you? Because that's a very idiotic move. Like, I'm gonna arrest the guy I was raping kids with. And oh shit, he's gonna tell on me. Let me go have him murdered now. That makes no fucking sense whatsoever. None. Absolutely no sense. It's ass backwards. It's ass backwards. That's like a drug dealer, instead of taking your money and giving you taking your $10 and giving you your $10 rock. That's like him giving you a $10 rock plus $10 on top of that. Makes no damn sense. $10 rock? Makes no sense at all. Hold on a second, y'all. I got to jump out the studio and jump back in because this shit is starting to lag real crazy. I don't fucking know why. It's lagging like hell. And I don't know why. Can't get rid of this lagging, baby. Get me out of this fucking studio now. It's doing it again. That's why the camera's all jumpy and shit. I don't know what's going on. Maybe I'm under attack. Because this has never happened before. My computer. No, I don't need help. Come back and hopefully clear this shit up. Shit. Barnes says, I told my family that still watch our go. Jump back in, all right, y'all? So just hang in there. Oh, I'm back, y'all. I'm back, y'all. I'm blackity black and I'm black, y'all. I'm blickety blackity black, and I'm blickety black and I'm back, y'all. Still moving a little slow. I think it's this article. This article I got pulled up because it's got a lot of pop-ups on the page, and I believe that's what's bogging my shit down. That's got to be it. So let me see. Maybe if I close that window, shut that article down, that'll smooth everything out. And then when it's time to read the article, I'll just bounce over to my email and open it back up again. Maybe that'll work. All right. So we good? Y'all can hear me all right? I feel like I'm still lagging though. So we good? Y'all can hear me all right? I feel like there's still some lag, and it's upsetting me. Maybe it's this Jeffrey Epstein stuff. They don't like the Epstein stuff, the fake Epstein stuff getting exposed. They don't like that shit at all. But anybody at this point that believes the Trump Jeffrey Epstein crap at this point, they probably did not really experience the first Trump Epstein smear campaign from before. And this picture was one of them that was being circulated on social media, of course, by the agents, showing Trump kissing his daughter and Jeffrey Epstein standing there. And this picture was actually broadcasted on CNN, and then they had to walk it back and correct the record because it turns out that the picture is freaking fake. It's a photoshopped image of Jeffrey Epstein standing by himself in a house in one picture, and then Trump sitting on a motorcycle kissing his daughter in a whole nother picture. And they took the two pictures, cropped out Jeffrey Epstein, put him in the picture with Trump, and made it look like Trump was with Epstein. The goofiest shit. It's the goofiest shit. But they really did that shit. Like they really tried it. Like citizen journalists don't do research. Well, that's because mainstream media doesn't do research. That's the problem. Now, photos reportedly show massive stockpile of bottled water left on a runway for more than a year in Puerto Rico after Hurricane Maria. Now, this scenario was particularly disgusting because this and the Puerto Rican people were short of supplies and people were actually dying. And the Trump administration had shipped all the supplies from America to Puerto Rico. But it was the local government's job in Puerto Rico to distribute these supplies to the people. But instead, what the local government in Puerto Rico did was they hid all the supplies in open fields and warehouses and deprived their own people of much needed survival supplies, and then took their punk asses on CNN and MSNBC and lied and said Trump didn't send any aid to Puerto Rico. And that's when Trump got pissed off and sent the U.S. military down there, and they distributed all the aid because the government was withholding it on purpose. Remember, after Hurricane Maria, there was another hurricane that hit, and it tore down a warehouse building that was owned by the local government in San Juan. And in that warehouse building, they found supplies that were left there a year or two prior that were meant for Hurricane Maria victims. There was baby Pampers, bottles, formula, all kinds of shit. Because the Puerto Rican government was stealing the supplies, hiding them from the people, just so they could get on TV and lie and say Trump was not sending supplies. And you remember the fake news running with that story? And you guys remember the fake news ran with that story. They were trying to spin that lie. It had a bunch of people believing it. I even debated with a brother on Brother Sanchez's panel over that shit. And I told him what was going on. The Puerto Rican government is withholding the supplies from their own people. Hey, guess which political party runs Puerto Rico? You guessed it. The Democrats, of course. In fact, the mayor of San Juan, that crazy looking Spanish white woman with the goofy ass glasses, she actually went to jail for corruption charges. That's how bad it was. That's how freaking bad it was. And then years later, somebody does a flyover and they see all these thousands of cases of bottled water that Trump shipped to Puerto Rico. This is what the government did with them. We're dealing with some sick ass motherfuckers. And if they're willing to go to those lengths to control the people, don't you think their predecessors would have gone to the lengths to cover up the real history of the world? If they're this devious and diabolical to push their agenda, where do you think they learned it from? They learned it from their predecessors who were just as evil and diabolical, and their agenda was to enslave the entire world. So boom, great reset, boom, destroy everything, boom, destroy the technology, kill all the engineers, get rid of everybody, intimidate everybody who's willing to speak out, lock them in insane asylums. And we'll take over this shit. We'll stamp our names on these ancient buildings and we'll call it ours and we'll rebuild society, give the people limited knowledge and primitive technology compared to what their ancestors had. And we'll call that the world. We'll call that the modern era. When it's nothing more than a post-apocalyptic Negan savior society. And Negan in Walking Dead was like the ringleader of this group called the Saviors, and they had their political structure and their civilization and all that stupid shit. But this is how wicked they are, which now brings me to the article that I planned on reading for you, which is Trump announcing the boats, the 25 new battleships. So let's go do that. You know what? Give me a second, guys. Let me jump out of StreamYards and jump back in. Let's go do that. I'll jump out of StreamYards and jump back in, and hopefully it'll fix things. So let me do that real quick. Give me a few minutes. All right, I'm back again. Back again. It looks better. I'm not all jumpy anymore. Feel better. Feel like I can move better. All right, let me pull up that article for y'all real quick. Let's get to that. Let's not waste any more time because we wasted enough time with these hiccups and this buffering and shit. See, I'm in 5 minutes and it's already buffering again. What the freak? This buffering and buffering again. What the? It's gonna let me live. Let me see. Maybe if I can go full screen, turn off the camera, maybe that'll help. Oh, Lord have mercy. Now I feel like I should have never closed out that article. Because now I don't know if I'll be able to get it pulled up. Take it for fucking ever. Okay, here we go. I got the email. It's taking forever to open. It usually never takes this long. I got the email. It never takes this freaking long. Like something is going on, and I don't know what it is. I don't know. Maybe my Ethernet connection is fucking off. And that's what's slowing me down. What the hell? This thing's taking so long. All right, this is some bullshit, man. Golly, finally, shoot. Well, we know it ain't the article because the article would usually once I X out the tab with the article, the bogging down stops. But I X'd out the tab with the article and it's still bogging down. So I'm gonna leave my camera off and hopefully. But I X'd out the tab. Hopefully that'll give us some breathing room and allow things to run a little smoother. You guys can see the article? Can y'all see it? And we got a bunch more slides to go through too. That's why I'm like pissed off right now. Shit is not cool. Not cool at all. Like I'm literally looking at the article on my screen, but for some reason it's not loading in StreamYard. All right. This is getting out of hand. Okay, guys, listen. I need y'all to sit tight. I need y'all to sit tight because I'm gonna have to fucking restart my whole computer. I can bridge. See all these fucking pop-ups off my screen. Why are you there? All right, fuck it. Let's do it. So Trump announces the Golden announced plans Monday to build a new class of battleships dubbed the Golden Fleet, unveiling what he called the most powerful warships in history during a press conference at his Mar. Trump said the Navy would begin constructing God damn it, two battleships of the proposed Trump class with plans to build up to 25 vessels in the future. Standing before the posters displaying the USS defiant. Trump described the shit pissing me the fuck off. I'm cussing again. Fucking nutty. God damn. All right. I'm gonna fucking restart this goddamn computer. So guys, give me like 10 minutes. I'm gonna close everything out and I'm gonna shut it down. 10 minutes. I'm gonna close everything out. And I'm gonna restart because this is getting out of fucking hand. All right, I'm back. See how far the numbers drop? That's why they play these games. That's why they play these whole games because my numbers just dropped off and they knew my numbers would drop because I'm having to stop the damn show, start the shit over, restart my computer, put y'all on hold. Now a whole bunch of people just bounced. All right, let me see if I can get my chronological gallery pulled up because that's the big gallery and the slides are not in order, so it will be extremely difficult to finish the slideshow with that gallery. But the other gallery, for some reason, refuses to open. Okay, now it's trying to. It's acting like it's going to open. Let's see if it actually does. Man, I hope those people come back. That would suck. And we were barely just touching 70 people. Like they wouldn't even let me have my 70 fucking people. Like 70 people, really? 70? Y'all censoring me and I got 70 people watching. Them's the whole games we playing now. That's what we doing now. Over 70 people. What the fuck is this? Okay, here we go. All right, we were like at slide 30, weren't we? I'm gonna have to read that article to you because I'm not gonna try to open that shit up again. It's probably gonna slow up my computer all over again. Yeah, this is wild. This is wild. I should have knew something was up the minute it started. Okay. Here we go. Here we go. Here we go. Here we go. All right, I'm gonna leave it there. I'm gonna pull up the article and I'm gonna read it off my phone just so you guys can hear it. I'm gonna read it to you because the computer ain't gonna let me pull that shit up, man. So where is it? Oh, I'm in the wrong email. Uh, no, it's supposed to be the right email. Wow, I'm in one inbox and it's showing me a different inbox on my phone now. So even my phone's fucking up. Wow, that's wild. All right, here we go. Trump announces plan to build 25 new carriers. All right. Built before, Trump said there's never been anything built like them. Okay. So Trump said the Navy would begin by constructing two battleships of the proposed Trump class with plans to build up to 25 vessels up to 25 vessels in the future. Standing before posters displaying the USS Defiant, Trump described the ship as 100% more powerful than any battleships built before. Each one of these will be the largest battleship built in the history of the world, Trump says. There has never been anything built like them. The president said the vessels would be equipped with hypersonic weapons, state of the art rail guns, advanced laser systems, and cruise missiles. Trump added that the U.S. Navy would lead the design process along with his involvement. Now, the advanced laser systems will not only serve as directed energy weapons, so I'm back, I think. Still sucks. So I'm back, I think. Yeah, this is crazy, T Wriggles. I don't know what the fuck's going on, bro. So I'm back. Still going in and out, huh? What the fuck? Can y'all hear me okay? Somebody said I'm good. It's better. The camera's still jumpy, so I feel like it's gonna start pixelating again. Can y'all hear me? Can y'all hear me? Can you hear me? Mic check, mic check, mic check. Can y'all hear me? Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Mic check, mic check, mic check. All right. Seems like you can. Okay. I'll keep an eye on the chat as I read. So let's get back to this article. Let's get right back to this article. Well, let's go back to where it said the thing about the lasers. Okay. The president said the vessels would be equipped with hypersonic weapons, state of the art railguns, advanced laser systems, and cruise missiles. Trump added that the U.S. Navy would lead the design process along with his involvement. Now, the lasers will also not only serve as directed energy weapons, but they'll also prove flat Earth, because what you'll have is more and more service members using these lasers and realizing that these lasers can actually reach targets at distances that would defy the curvature math of the globe, which means that the distances at which those lasers will be able to reach targets will be greater than what mainstream science tells us the curvature of the Earth would require, because lasers travel in straight lines, they don't curve, right? So let's continue reading. The announcement comes as the U.S. Coast Guard has stepped up efforts to interdict oil tankers in the Caribbean Sea as part of the administration's escalating pressure campaign on Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro's government. Trump recently announced a blockade of all sanctioned oil tankers entering and leaving Venezuela. Trump was joined by Secretary of State Marco Rubio, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, and Secretary of the Navy John Felon. For the announcement, Hegseth described the Golden Fleet as a generational commitment to fleet power. The president also disclosed that 15 submarines are currently under construction and said the U.S. is building 3 large aircraft carriers. He claimed American naval technology is at least 15 years ahead of any other competitor. Trump said he would meet next week with defense contractor executives to discuss production schedules, criticizing the companies for not manufacturing military equipment quickly enough and paying executive excessive salaries. Where we at? Where we at? These damn these pop-ups are crazy on this freaking article. That shit's wild. We make the best equipment in the world, but we don't make it fast enough, Trump said. He added that we would discourage stock buybacks, urging companies to invest instead in plant and equipment. The announcement comes during Trump's vacation at Mar-a-Lago and amid ongoing Operation Southern Spear, the administration's military campaign targeting drug trafficking. At least 100 people have been killed as part of that operation, according to reports. The U.S. has not built a battleship since 1944, with the last Iowa-class battleship, USS Missouri, completed during World War II. The Navy decommissioned its final battleship in the 1990s. Okay, so not only is Trump planning to build the ships, but he's also building submarines, which is even more interesting because the submarines have more lethal capabilities than the ships do. Now, that brings us to that, burning question. Well, what becomes of the old equipment that the new equipment is meant to replace? Well, hopefully if I can share this freaking screen, I can show you. Let me see. I got to close every unnecessary tab. That's first things first. All right. Please don't take 1,000 years. Damn it. like it. We're lagging again. I don't like it. Okay. Hopefully, we got it. Man, we was almost to 70 people. That shit dropped all the way down. That shit dropped all the way down to 48. That is ridiculous. That is some hateration, man. I see it buffering on my phone. Of the old fleet. Well, think Caribbean allies, because that's who those ships are going to. And those ships are going to go to the Caribbean allies because Trump's Operation Southern Spear is not going to last forever. And eventually he'll have to bring those American service members home and those Navy ships home. But he still wants to have an American force present in the Caribbean at all times. So what he's going to do is he's going to arm the Caribbean allied nations with those Navy ships, because currently as it stands, and this is part of the reason why the Puerto Rican government was so damn corrupt, the cartels control the Caribbean. And with the cartels controlling the Caribbean, these Caribbean nations that don't want the cartels in control don't have the capabilities, that the naval capabilities that the cartels have. So if the cartels can control the sea, they can control the transport routes, which means their earning potential is unlimited. So Trump is about to change the game with this move, because with America having superior ships, our allies having our older inferior ships that are still just as effective because we're still freaking using them to this day, right? That means that once those Caribbean allies get a hold of those American ships, those used American ships, they will now possess the same naval capabilities that the United States currently possesses in the Caribbean Sea. Thus, they will be able to maintain a presence in the Caribbean. So this search right here, this Google search right here kind of supports that point. Trump offers military aid to Caribbean allies is what I typed in, and this is what the AI answer gave me. President Trump's administration has significantly increased military presence and cooperation in the Caribbean, offering security agreements and deploying assets like the USS Ford carrier and F-35 jets, primarily to counter Venezuelan President Maduro, with allies excuse me, with allies like Trinidad, Guyana, Dominican Republic, and El Salvador, supporting surveillance and security operations against drug trafficking and potential aggression, though this strategy faces regional concerns about sovereignty and potential escalation. And remember, Trinidad, Guyana, Dominican Republic, and El Salvador are only 4 of the allies named. They are many, many more, in fact. Key actions and deployments. Naval buildup. The USS Gerald Ford Carrier Strike Group and other warships were deployed, increasing military readiness in the region. Air assets. Heavy lift C-17s and F-35 fighter jets have flown into Puerto Rico's Roosevelt Road Naval Base for surveillance and operational support. Security agreements. The U.S. signed agreements with countries like Guyana, the Dominican Republic, Trinidad and Tobago, and Panama for expanded air and maritime surveillance against drug trafficking. Now, part of those agreements is you help us with this mission and we'll pay you by giving you these old ships so you can continue the mission and prevent these guys from ever making a resurgence. That's part of the agreement. Because remember, these allied nations, they're not doing this for free. There's something in it for them. And it just so happens to be at the same time that Trump is building new Navy ships, he's going to start decommissioning, well, not decommissioning, but he's going to start selling the older ships. Because those ships are still fully combat capable. and operational. Trump just wants the newest, fastest, best equipment because if he's planning on bringing back the golden age, every allied nation has to have the capability to defend itself and squash any criminal organization that tries to seize power over them, and be able to maintain their own internal security so foreign enemies can't infiltrate and cause turmoil. This is why the surveillance systems are so important. This is why the up-to-date military equipment is so important. And of course, like I mentioned earlier in the show, this is why they have to have a uniformity standard of equipment, where all the allied nations are now using American equipment. So when they work with American allies on joint missions, the Americans are familiar with their equipment and they're familiar with the Americans' equipment. So it makes cooperation and collaboration a lot smoother, right? It's like you're working on an apartment building and you got several contractors, and all your contractors have different brand power tools. Everything's battery powered because there's no power to the property. So all your contractors need power tools that are battery powered. But one's got the Cobalt setup, one's got the Craftsman setup, one's got the DeWalt setup. You know what I'm saying? One's got what's the other one? Milwaukee setup. So if one guy runs out of batteries, his batteries run out of juice, he can't go to the next guy and say, hey, throw me a battery so I can keep working. Now he's got to go sit for 2 to 3 hours to let his batteries recharge. That's time wasted, time lost. But let's say all 4 of your contractors show up to the site with all their tools and everybody's got Cobalt. All the same equipment, same batteries and everything. Now we can exchange chargers. We can exchange batteries. I'm familiar with your tools. You're familiar with my tools. Makes things a lot smoother. It avoids those kinds of stupid delays because of this uniformity of equipment. This is why in the military, they have standard issue weapons. They don't let everybody just bring their own gun, because then you'll have 1,000 different calibers on the battlefield. How do you supply everybody? Special operations. U.S. Special Operations Forces are conducting missions from an afloat staging base. Motivations and context. Venezuela's standoff. The military buildup is largely aimed at pressuring Nicolas Maduro's government in Venezuela, which the Trump administration does not recognize, right? Because they stole the election. And the same voting machines they used to steal the election in Venezuela, the same voting machines they were using over here. How about that? Anti-drug campaign. A stated goal is to combat illicit firearms and drug trafficking with enhanced surveillance and enforcement. Strategic positioning. Strategic positioning. Strategic positioning. Bases in Puerto Rico and other locations provide strategic hubs for operations across the region. Supporting nations, Trinidad and Tobago, Guyana, Dominican Republic, Panama, and El Salvador have agreed to cooperate. Regional concerns. Some nations, like Cuba, oppose the U.S. presence, while others, including Venezuela, warn of destabilization and potential conflict. Well, fuck Cuba and Venezuela. How about that? Fuck Venezuela and Cuba. In essence, Trump is using a combination of military presence and security pacts to pressure adversaries and bolster allies in the Caribbean, focusing heavily on the situation with Venezuela. So, in order to protect the new golden age, you have to have allied nations with strong military capabilities. Why? It's a strategy called peace through strength. Meaning, you build up your military so strong and so powerful that nobody wants to mess with you. You become so strong that nobody wants trouble with you. Peace through strength. Why? It's called peace through strength. Meaning, you build up your military so strong and so powerful that nobody. Sorry, I had to do a sound check. I had to make sure my sound was okay. Am I sounding okay or am I sounding kind of nuts? Now, on the surface level, it seems like all this is over political power, economic supremacy, whatever, whatever. But really, what it's about is who gets to control the lost technology. That's what it's really about. Now, this image, what you're looking at right here, is the doors to the Paris Cathedral. And if you look at the sculptures on the doors, they are very, very detailed, extremely detailed. And that could only have been done by some form of unknown advanced technology. Cymatics, perhaps. And that technology is in the hands of the elites. And the elites are using the same cymatic technology to make the voice to skull technology, the weather manipulation and HARP. You could see the sound waves traveling through the sky when you see those wavy clouds. That's HARP. So they're using the technology for evil. And this is why the Patriot Alliance has to depose these people from power and seize that technology so it can be given back to the people so the people can rebuild the old world. We can start building more efficient machines, clean energy, free energy, and amazing building capabilities like the world has never seen. Now, in Russia, there's a lot of ancient Tartarian buildings still standing. And that's because the forces that had destroyed ancient Tartary, the ancient Tartarian Empire, were not able to completely destroy the Tartars in Russia. The Russians were actually able to maintain a lot of their history and retain a lot of their buildings and keep them standing. Now, are they still being used as power plants? That I don't know. That I can't tell you. But what I can tell you is they are highly protected buildings and nobody fucks with Russia because they'll cut your balls off. And this is a picture from Moscow, Russia, and it's a painting. It's an animated picture, right? And it looks very picturesque, bright colors, beautiful architecture. Even the stonework on the bridge looks Tartarian. And then, of course, you got the boats on the water and all that. But wouldn't you know, it's actually a real place. It's a real place. This is stock photos from Moscow, Russia. I don't know if you guys can see them. Maybe I'll pull them up in the big gallery. I'll pull them up in the big gallery for you. Hang on. Oh, God, not this weirdo. Get off my screen, you weirdo. I want you guys to see those pictures of Russia. And you see what Trump and Putin are trying to do is they're trying to bring back the old technology so we can rebuild the old world. That's what he keeps talking about with that golden age shit. That's what he means. But see, it's going over people's heads because not enough people have done research into the old world. They believe the fake history. Here we go. Look at that shit. That is Tartaria. If I didn't know any better, that is Tartaria. Look at the bright colors and the domes. Look at that shit. That is beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. Look at that. That is a real place. Look at that. Red square. Look at that shit. That is Tartarian architecture if you ever seen it. And that's what the Russians are trying to protect. That's what the deep state's trying to destroy. What slide number is that? 44. All right, now we have to find 45. I guess I'll just jump around in here since I'm already here. Here we go. Now, look at this right here. This is Trump's gilded ballroom at Mar-a-Lago. This is Trump's ballroom at Mar-a-Lago. Look at that shit. That is Tartarian architecture if I didn't know better. And it's got the gold inlays within the walls. And that's the way the energy systems work. But they had copper and brass and other metals inlaid, as well as gold in some places. And the conductors on the rooftops, that's right, Brian Butler, they would collect energy from the atmosphere, and the foundations of the buildings would basically serve as the ground. That's why they call it grounding. So the ground would provide the negative charge, the spires at the top of the buildings would provide the positive charge, and all the metal inlays within the stonework would conduct that electricity. Thus you would have lamps lighting up with no wires, just being in contact with the wall and creating that circuit. This is Mar-a-Lago, right? Check this shit out. This is what Trump plans to do with the grand ballroom at the White House. Look at the arched windows, how big they are. Look at the vaulted ceilings. Looks like a dome up there in the middle. This is Tartarian architecture. Trump and Putin and the alliance are trying to bring back the old world. This is the projected building that he plans to build. This is how it's going to look from the outside. It looks very Tartarian, very old worldish, doesn't it? Because the White House is an old world building. It's a Tartarian building made out of marble and granite, just like the Capitol building and the whole Washington, D.C. area. And it's all about energy. Now, speaking of energy, I have to go here. The Tartarians were able to build such beautiful structures that were so highly functional because they understood the nature of the earth. They knew that earth was not a stupid ass spinning ball like they were trying to teach everybody. And they also knew that the earth was flat. And in the flat earth cosmos, there is the idea that the earth itself is a giant source of energy. And that energy was harnessed by these old world peoples, and through the harnessing of that energy they were able to do extraordinary things that we can only imagine today. And all those big buildings with the giant stones that nobody could understand how they moved them and all that shit, they probably didn't even move the stones, they probably formed them right there on site. And everybody, the whole world has been brainwashed into believing in this globe, which means they're completely abandoning the idea that energy can be harnessed from the earth, because part of the flat earth teaching is about the earth being an energy source. So if they can remove the flat earth teaching altogether from the discussion, all ideas that come from flat earthers go out the window with it, which means the concept of free energy out the window, Tartarian Empire out the window, cymatics out the window. We're on a spinning ball, and the only real scientists in the world are NASA and the establishment. That's what they want you to believe. And flat Earth is so simple to prove. The picture on it, the two pictures on the top is flight paths on globe Earth from Australia to southern Chile in South America. You'll go from Australia all the way across the Pacific through the United States and then down south to South America. Makes no sense on the globe. Why don't they just fly right over the Pacific? Because they can't fake it they can't fake it in the real world. The planes will run out of fuel because the distance is not what they show us on the map. It's much farther. See? It's much farther. The picture on the right shows us just how far it is. And look, these are the flight paths, Australia to Chile, South America, right? That's what you're looking at here on the left. But on the right, it's the same flight path, but on the flat Earth. And it seems to make a hell of a lot more sense. And these are the actual paths the planes fly. So as much as they want to convince you that Earth is a spinning ball, there's too many tells that seem to suggest otherwise. And the flight paths is the main one. Hold on, my daughter just texted me. All right, here's the jet stream. So the flight paths make more sense on the flat Earth. Even the jet stream makes more sense on the flat Earth. This is the jet stream on the globe to the left. This is the jet stream on the flat Earth to the right. Now think about that Bible verse that says God is not the author of confusion. Which one looks like confusion and which one looks like order? And if God is not the author of confusion, who is? Oh, yeah, that's right. His adversary, Satan. And who gave us the globe? Satanists. How you like that? Hold on. Let me like my baby's comment real quick. Shit, why don't my phone let me do that? All right. You see, but they don't want you to have this knowledge. They don't want you to explore this subject because once you start looking into it and you start peeling back the layers of the lie, you start to realize more and more just how bad you've been lied to. And once you realize just how bad you've been lied to, that's when the unlearning of the brainwashing begins. That's when the true awakening begins. That's when you start going down the rabbit holes. And that's when you become better at deciphering the real information from the disinformation. Because the truth movement has become so powerful and so formidable to the establishment that they found a good strategy to throw people off. You put out disinformation using agents posing as truthers in order to mislead and misguide everybody. And because it's coming from a source that's not CNN or not mainstream media, people in the truth movement are going to fall for it too. This is how they were able to sell the Trump bad narrative to the people who are supposed to be awake enough to know better. This is how. Using agents who are perceived as credible sources. And they might be credible with everything else, but lie their ass off when it comes to Trump. Parrot the mainstream media when it comes to Trump. Trump bad, Trump bad, Trump bad. It don't matter what they say he's bad about or how bad he is. The fact is, Trump bad is the theme. So they can say Trump bad because he's not in touch with the spiritual world and blah, blah, blah. Trump is more spiritual than anybody. Trump knows about that shit. Remember, he ran in those circles with those people. He did business with a lot of those people. He knows what the fuck they do. That's why they were so afraid of him when he became president, because they knew he was going to come after them. And they all try to cover their ass by becoming his political opposition. So when you hear people say shit like the earth is flat, don't just laugh at them, because this is what makes so many people say that. Not only that, but of course, what the Tartarian Empire was able to accomplish. What slide number was that? 47. So now we have to find 48. I think it was back here. Here we go. Now, Trump mentioned the golden age, right? This is his inaugural address on January 20th, 2025, when he first took office after this last election, right? And this was his statement. He says, thank you very much, everybody. Wow, thank you very, very much. And he says, Vice President Vance, Speaker Johnson, Senator Thune, Chief Justice Roberts, Justices of the Supreme Court of the United States, President Clinton, Bush, Obama, President Biden, Vice President Harris, and my fellow citizens. The golden age of America begins right now. And the golden age of America was ancient Tartaria, which was invaded, overrun, taken over, stolen, destroyed. So there's Trump mentioning the golden age with the golden fleet. But Trump wasn't the only president to mention the golden age. JFK also mentioned the golden age. And oddly enough, it appears as if Trump is carrying out JFK's plan, even down to not collecting a presidential salary. JFK did not collect the presidential salary either. While JFK didn't often use golden age for his own era, he referenced it in contrast to the potential for a bright future, particularly in the Middle East, a new golden age, and in acknowledging America's responsibility for its citizens' later years. But the famous golden age of poetry and power came from poet Robert Frost at his inauguration, hinting at the potential of a new era. And that new era they're talking about is a resurrection or a return to the old world technology, which was far more advanced than the bullshit they gave us today. Here are some relevant JFK statements related golden age contexts. JFK vision and aspirations using golden age contextually. For the Middle East, from the cooperation of these two awakened nationalisms could come a new golden age for the Middle East, but from their destructive vendetta can come nothing but misery and poverty and the risk of war. "49. For senior citizens, it is not enough for a great nation merely to have added new years to life. Our objective must also be to add new life to those years. But the last of life for which the first was made is still not a golden age for all our citizens." And Robert Frost, the poet, the golden age of poetry and power. At JFK's inauguration, Robert Frost read his poem for John F. Kennedy's inauguration, which included the lines, "A golden age of poetry and power, of which the noonday's the beginning hour." Of which this noonday's the beginning hour. And what happened at noon on inauguration? JFK got sworn in. What happened at Trump's inauguration? He got sworn in and mentioned the golden age. So he's kind of mimicking JFK to send a signal that this is the plan that he's executing. JFK's response, reframing golden age for the military. In a speech to West Point cadets, JFK addressed the idea of a past golden age for military service. "I am sure that many Americans believe that the days before World War II were the golden age, that was the golden time of service. Nothing could be further from the truth." In essence, JFK used the term to highlight missed opportunities or potential, while Robert Frost used it to herald the potential of the Kennedy administration itself. So you got Trump using this golden age language, you got Kennedy using this golden age language, and if you actually study the golden age, you will come to realize that the golden age is a direct reference to the old world. when the people had the power, not the establishment. And what's funny is that Vladimir Putin also used the term golden age quite a bit. The quote often associated with Vladimir Putin regarding a golden age relates to the historical golden age of the Russian Empire under Catherine the Great, which is often referenced in analysis of his imperial ambitions. It is also noted that a quote mentioning the golden age is before us, not behind us, has been attributed to Xi Jinping. So there you got Trump and JFK using golden age language. You got Putin and Xi Jinping using golden age language. And did I not just spend a large portion of this show showing you the evidence of an alliance between Trump, Putin, and China? And the golden age refers to the age of the Tartarian Empire. And it wasn't an empire in the sense that there was one supreme ruler and governors ruling the sublands, the subsidies, I guess, the subdivisions. It was actually a culture of utilizing free energy, sound wave technology to build buildings that were alive, that were energy structures, resonance machines. It was a culture of innovation that was spread throughout the whole world using universal knowledge, because all these Tartarian structures have many similarities: the hollow shafts, the empty rooms, the bell towers, the spires, the domes, the arches. That was the golden age. And when I say Tartarian Empire, I don't mean it in the sense of Greek or Roman empires or British empires or even the American Empire. I mean it in the sense of it was a culture that was known internationally throughout the world, because all the people were pretty much on the same page with their knowledge of the earth. There was no mainstream science establishment feeding them bullshit. So they knew the creation, they knew themselves, they knew their potential, and they realized their full potential. That was the golden age. So when Trump, Putin, and Xi Jinping are talking about the golden age, these are the world's three largest military superpowers. So when Q says patriots in control, that means worldwide patriots are in control. Yeah, Barnes, I don't fuck with Christmas. I'm no longer celebrating Christmas. This is my last year and I am done with Christmas. It's a bunch of consumerism bullshit, and I ain't fucking with it. And for the people that believe it's a religious holiday, if you're a Christian, you're sadly mistaken, because ain't nothing biblical about it. It's consumerism culture masked in tradition. That's what it is. So you buy into the whole Christmas idea, thinking it's about the birth of Jesus. But nowhere in the Bible says Jesus was born on December 25th. So I'm through with Christmas. Yeah, Charles Manson knew a lot of shit. He was awake to a lot of shit, but he was crazy as bad shit too. But the thing is, though, a lot of these people we perceive to be crazy are actually highly intelligent, very knowledgeable people. And what happens to them is they get an information overload and they crash out permanently. Like their brains go into shutdown or blackout mode and they just do wild shit. It appears the user may be conflating quotes, as it is U.S. President Donald Trump who has, oh, damn it, I keep dropping my shit. Fuck it. U.S. President Donald Trump, who has repeatedly used the exact phrase the American Golden Age when discussing his political agenda and inauguration. Key points regarding the use of Golden Age in political context includes Putin's historical references. Analysts note that Putin's imperial ambitions and desire to restore Russian greatness often draw parallels to the reign of Catherine the Great, a period considered the golden age of the Russian Empire, marked by territorial expansion and cultural development. Okay, we got two more, 53 and 54. Where are they? Okay, that's 54. Where is 53? All right. Maybe I didn't download it because I don't see it in here. I found 54. Can't find 53. This is why I can't use this gallery. Here we go. There's 53. So slide 53, what we're looking at are ruins of ancient Tartarian architecture with all these carvings in the cement. And what you'll notice is there's several pieces with that spiral symbol in it, right? And I showed you guys what the spiral and the spiral triangle and the spiral circle itself represents before. In the modern times, it's used by pedophiles as a code symbol. The spiral triangle means boy lover. The spiral circle means girl lover, little girl lover, right? These are the preferences of pedophiles. But in ancient Tartaria, the spiral represented something totally different. It was closer to what the original people of Earth believed, which was that life started at the center of the Earth at the North Pole, spread out like a ripple effect, and the spiral represents the continuity, not the continuity, but the expansion of life. So back when the Tartarians used this spiral symbol, it was used in reference to the womb of the Great Mother, who was said to be Mother Nature, the creator of nature. God was the creator of the earth, and Mama Amma would have been the creator of man and animals, right? And the spiral, there's images of Mama Amma, the great mother, where she's got her arms raised up to the heavens, her legs open, so her body forms like a hyperboloid symbol, which represents the recycling of energy going in, energy coming out. And right at her womb, there's a spiral right on her womb. And that spiral represents the origins of life. So these Tartarians that put these spirals, that engrave these spirals into these concrete structures, they knew who they were. They knew who the creator was, and they believed what the ancient people of the flat earth cosmology believed. And here's slide 54, a Tartarian bridge somehow being modernized, or it's being demolished, and there's the pieces they're hauling away by cart. And this is what they're destroying. Look at that beautiful artwork. And there's the spiral. Look at that shit. Look at that beautiful architecture. The continuity of life. And if you notice where this spiral is located, right? Check this out. This will blow your mind. This structure right here, it's one of these. It's got the peak at the top, right? The spire at the top, basically. And right here, where this would be the hat, where this person is standing, this would be the head. This would be the thinker, the originator of thoughts, right? So this would be the head. Right here would be the body. The spiral would be where the womb is, and then there's the base of the pillar, which represents the legs. So even in this structure right here, you see the Great Mother symbolism. I'm gonna have to show you guys, teach you guys more about the Great Mother on on the next flat Earth stream. But the Tartarians were flat earthers, and their architecture was all based on flat Earth cosmology, and this is why they were able to accomplish feats that modern science can't even explain, because modern science is all based on a lie. Modern science is all based on based on a false cosmology created by the children of Lucifer. Okay. And so you have magnificent structures built by flat earthers trying to be deciphered by globe earthers. John Jackson says, I thought the spiral was for pedos. Well, John Jackson, I actually explained that, my brother. I actually explained that when I showed the image the first time. Remember, the pedos adopted that symbol in the modern era for their own communications to identify each other and what their tastes were, right? But back in Tartaria, the spiral represented the origin of life, the point of singularity in the center, and the spiral curving out, forming a ripple effect. That's how life begins. That's how life spreads. So the spiral was in ancient times was used to represent something wholesome, represent life, the creation of life and the expansion of life. But in the modern time, that ancient symbol was corrupted and used to represent something debaucherous. Basically, they took the ancient symbol and shitted on it. Same thing they did with the swastika, right? The swastika, it represents pretty much the same thing the spiral represents. It's just a different version of it, which represents the point of singularity in the middle, and the spinning motion represents the expansion of life, creating the ripple effect. But the swastika today is associated with hate, mass murder, Hitler, anti-Semitism, all the bullshit. All the bullshit. Right, John Jackson. Bingo. You got it, brother. Yep. Just like they perverted the rainbow. They take everything. And that's why they destroyed ancient Tartaria. That's why they went out of their way to reset everything, brainwash the next generation of children, then the next generation after that, because they wanted to make sure that their new system was not questioned, not opposed, and not and there would be nothing to compare it to. But now that we look back at Tartaria, the ancient architecture, the thought that went into it, the technology that had to have been used to accomplish these these construction projects, and the science that went into it to turn these buildings into power plants and sound resonance machines. Now that we have that to compare to our modern day, their entire history that they fed us completely falls apart. Because the history that they fed us told us what? Our ancestors were primitive. They use stones and chisels and shit. They didn't have the technology to accomplish what it was that they accomplished back then. But maybe they did. Maybe they did. And the people who control the world today don't want us to know that. They don't want people to know that. They want to make sure that we stay ignorant, because if we crack the code and we find out how our ancestors were able to harness the energy to build these megalithic structures, can you imagine the possibilities for the average everyday human? And can you imagine how much control over the average everyday human the establishment will lose? Like, there'll be too many people getting ahead. And the reason why they want to keep everybody at a certain level is because if too many people are able to build wealth on their own, and that system is not tightly controlled, they're going to face competition. And then there's going to be other power players trying to take their power and challenging their power. And that's what they don't want, because their entire system is built on a fake history, fake cosmology, complete lies, hidden agendas, and the end goal is to keep us enslaved. So if we ever get wind of that technology or that knowledge or that information, they won't be able to keep us broke. They won't be able to keep us silent, and they damn sure won't be able to keep us enslaved. So I don't know how well I proved my point to you guys tonight, but I genuinely honestly believe that the modern day patriot alliance between Trump, especially between Trump and Putin, is the ancient Tartarian alliance trying to reclaim what was rightfully theirs. Not to say Trump and Putin were, descendants of Tartarians or anything like that. Tartaria was a mentality, it was a culture. It wasn't an ethnic group. It wasn't a race. It wasn't a nationality. It was an international culture spread throughout many nations. And it was based on the principle of sustainability, efficiency, and self reliance. And they built systems that encompassed all of that. And so there was people living at a time where they had access to unlimited knowledge, unlimited potential, and there was no dependency. So it was impossible to enslave them. But their only problem was their war capabilities were limited because they were thinkers, not warriors. And so the evil people that saw their vulnerability, exploited their vulnerability, stole their technology, used it to destroy their civilization, rewrite history, and create the bullshit slave system that we're under now. No, John, I haven't discussed the bells, but the bells were used as sound machines for healing. So the bells were a very important part, and the bells resonated, the sounds of the bells resonated through the building. And it actually had an effect on people in the building. It also affected the water too. The ringing of the bells would actually charge the water and make the water healing. This is where the whole concept of holy water comes from. And back then, they didn't have surgery. They didn't need doctors because everybody knew how to use sound to heal themselves. So, Return of the Golden Age. Is the Patriot Alliance actually the Tartarian Alliance? I believe it is. I believe it is. And I believe what we're seeing today is much bigger than just politics. It ain't just politics, and it never was. This is about freeing the enslaved people of the world from the system of enslavement that's been established to keep them enslaved for as long as they possibly can. And the enslavement began with the destruction of the Tartarian Empire worldwide and the theft of the free energy technology that opened the door to unlimited potential for the people. And the mission today is to depose the successors of the people that stole that technology and enslaved the world and replace them with people who will release that technology back to the people and offer the people an opportunity to be free. And this is why Trump says the best is yet to come, because the old world is coming back. This modern world is done. It's done. Families can't even survive this shit. So it's done. It's going to implode on itself. It's going to self-destruct. But the new Tartaria, it's going to be a rebirth for the world. It's going to be like the New Jerusalem that the Bible talks about. But the evil has to be wiped out. The evil has to be eliminated because that's where ancient Tartaria dropped the ball. They let the evil metastasize until it destroyed it from within. So anyway, guys, that brings us to the end of tonight's slideshow. And of course, if anybody would like to support the show, please feel free to do so. Oh shit, did I X out of my gallery? I don't. Oh no. All right, fuck it. If anybody would like to, if you haven't subscribed to the show yet, to the channel yet, let me say that. Please make sure you click that subscribe button if you want more knowledge. Also, if you're following me on Rumble, shout out to A Pouty for the Rumble rant. He says, follow Rattle Trap 1776 yet. Heard of Madison Marquette? Have not. Have not. I follow Rattle Trap 1776, just haven't heard of Madison Marquette yet. But I hope you guys learn something every show that you watch, because that's my goal, is to teach, is to educate, take the knowledge that I've acquired, impart it onto you in such a way that you can impart it, you can understand it thoroughly and impart it your way onto somebody else. So we're not an echo chamber repeating the same talking points like all those other conservative channels. We're actually about growth and learning. And that's what I'm here to do. I'm here to teach, because I had to grow and I had to learn a lot of shit over the years. But as I learned and as I grew, I was able to teach you guys and allow y'all to grow with me. You know what I'm saying? So now we're at the cusp of something great. Now, instead of just looking at the bare left, right, left versus right, red versus blue politics, we can look at the whole world and see how everything is changing and what direction it's moving in. And it makes it easier to understand the events as they unfold, which avoids the panic. It avoids the vulnerability to be manipulated by the media, because if you don't know what's going on, first thing you're going to do is look for answers. And the first person with the answer is going to be the mainstream media telling you to go to the slaughterhouse or take this vaccine, like during COVID. So this is part of the empowerment process, is gaining knowledge, because knowledge is power. I don't know if you guys used to watch G.I. Joe back in the day, but at the end of every episode, they would be like, no, knowing is half the battle. That means understanding and respecting your enemy's capabilities, understanding and respecting your own capabilities, knowing what strategy to employ that would be effective, knowing the losses you're going to suffer going into the war allows you to better prepare for that war and puts you in a better position to win that war. Like for me, one big mistake I made when I decided to get into this war was thinking that I could have a family and still fight this war. I can't. Because one, having a family makes you vulnerable. Because if they can't get to you, they'll get to your wife or they'll get to your kids. So in a way, I kind of got to be a lone ranger to really be effective at doing this, because if I'm going to be putting my life on the line, it has to be only my life and no one else's. So it's kind of it's a journey I'm going to have to walk alone, and I didn't plan for it. And I experienced a lot of hurt throughout the years doing this, but now I understand why, because it's not, if this is going to be my path, the family man path is not meant for me, because the family man is the family man, but the warrior walks alone. And I'm in this war, and I've been in this war. And I'm here to fight this war just like you guys are here to fight this war. I'm not here to spectate or armchair quarterback. I'm here to give you guys the real. So, anyway, I'm going to go ahead and get up out of here. I'm sure you can see it in my eyes how tired I am. I got the droopy eyes. That's how my face feel right now. So, if anybody else would like to support the show, please feel free to do so. Shout out to my brother David for the Cash App. Shout out to my brother A Pouty for the Rumble Rant. Shout out to my good brother Lee 14224 for that faithful support on the PayPal. My brother Lee, man, he hit me with that Christmas gift. That made my day, brother. I tell you, that really made my day. Thank you for that support, man. Thank you for that support. And let me check the Citizen Man Cash App, because my sister Angela Harris, she be hitting me on the Cash App, but she hits the Citizen Man Cash App. So I have to switch accounts to make sure that I have her noted. And I don't. Or she didn't hit the Cash App. So I guess Angela didn't make it tonight. Well, it is Christmas Eve, so that's understandable. So we got 3 supporters for the night. So shout out to you guys for that support. And anybody else that would like to support the show, now be the time if you want to get a shout out. But if not, I'll just shout you out on the next show. But remember, that support is it's much needed and it's very important because our enemies they give themselves millions and millions of dollars to lie to you. So $1 for the truth, $5, $10 for the truth, small price to pay. But it goes a long way. It goes a long way and it helps make this broadcast possible. So, with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, because it pays for the StreamYard, it pays for the internet, you know what I'm saying? It pays for any information that I have to pay for. There was a time when I was making so much money on YouTube, I had travel expenses and ended up making my way to Washington, D.C. for January 6th, thanks to the support of the people. So, if we can get back there, we could be a lot more effective. And I sure would like to. So, with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you guys for being here. I appreciate you guys tuning in. And thank you especially for hanging in with me through those technical difficulties. I have no idea what the hell was going on, but I did when I had to put you guys on hold that last time. What I did was I ran downstairs, checked the router and the Ethernet cable, and it turned out that the Ethernet cable wasn't plugged in all the way. My man M. Scott says I'm still lagging on Rumble. Ran downstairs, checked the Ethernet cable, and it turned out it wasn't plugged in properly. It's like it's got some looseness to it. So now I got to address that to make sure we don't have this problem on the next show, because that could have been it, or it could have been the Epstein shit. I don't know. But with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, I want to just say thank you guys for being here. I appreciate the love. I appreciate the support. Most definitely. And I will see you guys on the next show. Citizen Man, out.